Well, hey guys. I actually lost track of time. I was playing with Shopcat, who's my co-host. He's right here on the couch with me. So John is here. We're gonna get John up here. I wanted to just give you guys just a quick reminder. There will be no podcast on Monday. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be feeling well. I have my second dose of the Fauci ouchie. So I basically have shut everything down. I did get a couple videos filmed today that I'm going to get edited. I'm going to shoot some more because you guys know I said that I wasn't happy with the videos and stuff that were that I was trying to edit that were for next week. So I'm going to try and reshoot a bunch of stuff. Yeah, guys, the wife is fine. There's a chance she might have an ovarian cyst. She was having a lot of pain. So the doctor was like, if she starts running a fever, we got to bring her in. Next week, she goes in for an ultrasound and some other stuff. So she was in a good bit of pain. So, all right, let's bring John in and we can talk about knives because I know you guys don't want to talk to just me. We do that all the time. So welcome, John.
Thank you for having me.
Everyone's here. I don't know, since you're doing it on your phone, I don't know if you can see comments.
I can, I think, well, I could see them on the other screen, but they're very small. So I just got to get close to them.
Okay. So usually what I do, and I'll let you know. So we want to try and keep it monetized. So you don't seem like you curse near as much as I do. But if we get the cursing and swearing, sometimes to get demonetized, try to at least keep the hard F-bombs to a limit. Plus, you know, people listen to it on iTunes and I don't want somebody's parent getting, or some child's parent getting upset saying, are you cursing up a storm and stuff, because now it is on Apple iTunes. So, if you see a question you want me, if like you see a question that someone has and you want me to bring it up, I can just always bring it up on the screen like this, like 2A Dave. You can see that? You can see that, yeah. Right? Okay, cool. Yep. Greg says BGM. So the first thing I have to ask is, what does BGM stand for?
It's my middle initials and my confirmation name. So, and my last name. So Benedict Gaetano Miller.
Wow. It's quite the handle you got going there.
Yeah, I got four names.
So, I mean, at least your last name's easy to spell because you only have to use the first and the last. You don't have to throw those other ones in.
Yeah. Benedict and Gaetano are my middle names. They're kind of confusing to spell.
Greg, you can ask that a little bit later. I wanna wait until we get into some of the other stuff before we start asking that stuff. So, tell us about yourself. I know that you're now I forget. God damn it! You told me where you're at. It's not Minneapolis. Huh?
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. That's right. New Hampshire. And yeah. I'm just dumb enough I couldn't remember. So tell us a little bit about yourself and BGM Knives.
21-year-old knife maker in New Hampshire. Started when I was 17, making knives. Late 2017 is when I started. And just riding the waves, seeing how it where it goes. I have a lot of fun making knives, obviously. I've always been into knives. So I'm having fun.
That was one of the first questions I was going to ask you is how did you get into knives? Because a lot of guys have that story like, oh, my grandfather got me a knife, or I was at a store and I saw something, I bought it. And then, you know, everybody can kind of remember how they got into knives, what kind of started it.
I've always been into knives. I think I got my first knife when I was probably 7, I want to say 6 or 7. And I carried a lot. And I always loved the simplicity and that you could carry it pretty much anywhere. So
nice. It's just a ready tool that you always had available.
Yeah. And it was cool too. It looked cool.
Yeah.
That you can carry. You know, flashlight is awesome.
Yeah, my dad got me a pocket knife when I was like, I'm almost 47. I turned 47 in like a week. And my dad got me a knife when I was like 5 or so. He got me it was a little crappy Camelus silver sword pocket knife, but I carried that thing across 16% of the countries of the world because not only did I have a knife, it was a nice little thing that I had that was my father's. And it was just like, when I was in the military, I could carry a little piece of home with me everywhere I went. I just carry it in my pocket, just a little reminder of where I came from, what I was doing it for, and all those things. And it was a pocket knife. And then the same thing. I just kind of have always been into knives since then. But more for the fact, I grew up on a farm. You always had to have a knife, you know, for a lot of different things.
Definitely.
So what are we talking about here? Jigsaw and excellent pew pew beauty. I do some pew pew videos on full30.com. Yeah. So I actually was going to pull it out, but it's underneath a bunch of stuff. I actually have a regrind here at the house. We had talked about it earlier, and then I remembered I have a Ferrum Forge ProTech Mordax that you did a regrind on that's here from one of my customers for sharpening. And I was like,
nice.
Man, I was going to pull it out. I still can. I mean, I'll get it here in a little bit. I'll let you talk about some stuff and I'll minimize, I'll give you the full screen, but like, no joke, guys, I've seen a couple of his regrinds and every one of them, if I didn't know the knife before, like if you handed me that knife and I'd never seen one of the ProTech Mordaxes, I would not know that it did not come from ProTech that way. If anything, the grind on those came out better than ProTech's grind. ProTech's grind was a little off.
Yeah, they usually are a little bit off.
Yeah.
Some of them are really bad, but the Mordaxes are pretty good usually. But most Demco knives, they're very spot on.
Yeah.
I notice how they're very, tight tolerances. Hinders are usually really good. But there's a lot of brands that, have a lot of defects. And they're all machine, obviously. Machine ground.
Yeah. And something like I've talked about it in different things. Like sometimes you'll get a knife and it's got, like you look down the blade and it's just got a curve to it. And you're like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
With a knife that's in a grinder, in a burger grinder, and it's supposed to be like surface grind. I was like, how does that even happen? With post heat treat grind and stuff like that.
Sure.
So Beardo says, what does he do on a regrind? I'll let you answer that. And I'll actually go grab that knife so I can kind of show it.
Okay. So for regrinds, you'll send them in and I will do an 80 grit, 60 grit ceramic belt, which will give you a finish like this. I don't know if you can see that properly. Probably not. Lighting's pretty bad. I'll give you a finish like this, and then I will bump it up to that's to remove the bulk material. Then I will go to an 80 grit Trizac belt, and that will give you this finish. This is a Demco. And that's a little bit finer, and then I'll finish it off with a conditioning belt to get it nice and smooth. And it clears out some of the defects that happen during my process. Some of the little scratches and stuff.
So do you use this? Do you use that Combat Abrasives conditioning belt, the kind of the orange, or the reddish one that they sell?
I use I think this one is from Pops. Nice Select. Is their ultra fine one, gray one?
I think I have a medium.
Yeah.
I think the one I have is like a medium. I used it when I did a hollow grind before my grinder started blowing the breaker or tripping the breaker in the house. I did a hollow grind for a friend of mine on a knife I had made for him out of S125V. And ouch, goddamn cat! I used it, and it did a really good job. So that sometimes you still get some inconsistencies in grit when you go from one grit to the other. And when I cleaned it up, I was like, wow, that's really good. Yeah, Jacob Ginsburg is the one that recommended that belt to me. So, but this is what I was talking about. This is one that you did a regrind on. And if you look at that, like, you can't tell me that doesn't look like it's factory. Nice clean lines. And the fact is, these were pretty thick knives. These were pretty thick knives to begin with.
Grind goes back. They're pretty thick.
Yeah. And they were Ferrum Forge's knives were all full flat grinds. They never did any hollows. And this knife really did benefit from it. As much as I like my old school Mordax, if I didn't have one that was, oh crap, we got a thank you, Aiden, for the money. Well, it's for Shopcat anyway. You guys basically have started buying Shopcat's food. I don't know if you know that. But yeah, the Mordax was a fairly thick knife to begin with, as much as I love it. And if it wasn't for the fact that mine's an old school one that was, mine's right over here. Mine was an old school one that I had gotten from my friend Nico. This is one of the original mid-tech ones. And you just can't get these anymore. It's not like they don't make these anymore. So if it wasn't for that, I would send it to you to get done. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what was this? I've sent him so many people. I've sent him so many people for regrinds, and every person that's gone to him has had high praise for his work. I do too. Like I said, the first time I saw one of the Mordaxes patina, I was like, it was one of them, and I was like, I thought these were like, I was kind of confused. I was like, I thought these were all full flat grinds, and the guy that handed it to me is like, no, I sent it off to a guy named John, BGM Knives, and he did a regrind on it for me. I was like, I was like, is he using a machine? Like, is he using you do these freehand, right?
Yes. Yeah. No work rest.
I'm kind of upset.
I'm probably not going to be able to. Thank you, Patina, by the way. I'm probably not going to be able to keep that up once I get older, because my hands are probably going to get shaky. But
yeah,
right now, it's all freehand without a work rest.
I was gonna say, wait till you're like almost 50, like I am. You're like, you just think about going to the grinder. You're like, yeah, I'd rather just stay here and not do that.
Yeah.
Currently sharpening a meat cleaver. What do we say? Oh, here's a good one. These people ask me this one all the time. So this one's directed towards you. Any plans on trying to do a folder? That's Greg Gutfield.
Definitely, I will absolutely do a folder. It has to come in time though. It's going to be a while. I want to get my own place. I need a mill for a folder if I want to do it, without a lot of handwork. But yes, definitely, eventually, I will do folders.
So you want to say hi to everybody? Everybody likes you, Shopcat. So do you want to say hi? And then you can lay back down. So there you go. I did so I forget who was saying it before we started. I did see somebody's like, oh, more Shopcat Chronicles. I actually did a Shopcat Chronicles short right before I started the podcast. Let's see here. What was so I've seen some of your designs. Like, do you just have a specific type of designs, or do you just pretty much make what you feel like making when you feel like making it? You just like wake up one day, I was like, yeah, you know what? I feel like doing a drop point, or I feel like doing this, or I feel like doing that.
With coming up with designs, that is what how I approach it. Like what I think the lineup of my models needs, if it needs a model or something, some other design, certain length or something that I'm missing.
Mm-hmm.
But for the orders, I'm just working off orders. So every about 7 days, I'll ship out around 10 to 11 knives.
Oh, Jesus. So I was going to ask you, what kind of steel? I mean, I kind of know what kind of steels you are using because I've seen some of them. I know you've done some stuff in AEBL.
Yeah, but I dropped that for Nitro B recently.
Okay, I'm not. I mean, it's not for a lot of knives. It's not something like for an outdoors knife. It wouldn't be something I would want. For a lot of other knives, it works really well, like kitchen knives and things like that. That you're not needing as much bite necessarily. I find AEBL not to have that tooth or bite that I would want on that edge. I just don't. I don't think it forms the carbides that you get in some of the other steels. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I use 100, ADCR V2, Nitro V, CBM 3V, CBM Crewwear, some Z-Wear, and some M4. I did a couple knives in M4.
I was going to ask you, how is M4 to grind? Because I haven't talked to too many people. I know that like I've ground some like S125 and some some of the higher S steels, but I've never done that. And I was curious how the M4 is. Is it really wear abrasive or wear resistant?
It's not too bad. It's not any worse than Crewwear. Okay. CPM 2V is my favorite steel to grind. It's just, it's such a great steel to work with. But that's great wear resistance.
That's a question I had because I was going to ask you right after that one. As soon as I figure out where I put my list, what's your favorite? Because there's different things. But we'll let Jeremy Russell ask. What do you charge for regrind, or does it vary?
$55 shipped back to you, and the wait time is around a week.
$55, and it's a week. There you go, Jeremy. So there's a big difference between steels you like to work with and steels that you like, because I know that I've made a couple knives out of 440C, but I wouldn't necessarily want a knife I made for myself in 440C. So what's your favorite steel, and what's your favorite steel to work with?
3V all around. It's easier to work with than 52-100 for me.
Is it?
I mean, yep. The grits that I use, it's just even like drilling holes through it, it's easy. It's clean. It just works really well. But
Yeah.
I don't like 3V, when compared to Z-Wear or Brewwear, because it's an inferior steel in my opinion for cutting boxes. What I do generally.
Yeah, I like 3V, but it has that downfall of that it's really easy for it to oxidize. It oxidizes really easily, especially if you've just blasted it and you it's hard to like get a super fine finish on it if you're not going to like do something specific, like maybe do like you said, like a Cerakote or something like that. You said you do some Cerakote stuff.
Send out this time.
Yeah, it definitely likes to oxidize real fast in a wet environment if it's been exposed, like blasted.
Cryogenically heat treated 3V?
I have it.
I think you would like that a lot better because the cryo makes it's almost stainless. It's
really?
Like F35BN levels. So it's not, great, but it's definitely a step up. Normal 3V corrodes really fast. Same thing with Z-Wear. That's another thing that I do with all my knives that fit into my DeWar is I cryo everything.
Oh, okay.
Cryogenic important, and then the low temper. So you don't go into 1,000-degree temper. You do like 300 to 400-degree temper.
Jacob Vermette says, hiya. What was this? Justin High asks, if I send you a kitchen knife, can you copy it to a hunting knife size?
Yeah, that sounds doable. I mean, you message me with pictures and stuff, and I can go over it.
Yeah. So your Instagram is just BGM Knives.
Yep, and that's my email too. That's
your email knife at Gmail. Yeah. So I've seen some of the fix, but the handle material that you did for my buddy was a blue. And I don't think it was micarta, and I don't think it was G10. It might have been that stuff that that my buddy Jacob uses, where it feels almost like a towel. I can't remember. I don't think it was but it's been a while. I don't think it was micarta. It might have just been G10, but it kind of had that weird, like it was a really like a light color, and it had like a texture almost like micarta, but it didn't quite feel like micarta. I don't know if I'd have to ask Jake what it was he was using. I should have asked him first before I asked you that question, but
I don't recall that knife. But I don't use. It's pretty much all exclusively micarta and G10. Some guys send in the special micartas and stuff for me to put it on a knife. But normally I just use a very basic color of micartas and then a ton of different colored G10.
Yeah, this has been a while ago. Like I said, this has been like almost 2 years ago. So it might have been something he sent you because he specifically had it. So Greg, that's not the one. Ken, I did see your email. I'm sorry I didn't respond. I had sharpened some knives for Ken Harris. And once again, you guys that are paying members, I appreciate that so much. Greg says, if I send you a picture of a knife, can you kind of copy that design?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. I will. Customs, you send me a picture or some idea that you have. I've even done it on just text of what he was looking for, and then we'll bounce sketches back and forth.
Guys, I actually have a spot on here where I've got it listed. We're going to do a bunch of question stuff because I want to get through some of these questions because I actually have. I mean, we've got time. It's only like 20 minutes in. We got 2 hours. We can do a lot of question and answer stuff. So, your heat treats, because so now I know you do the cryo because I've had a lot of people, especially Jared Neves talks a lot about how good your heat treat is on your knives. So that explains a lot. If you're doing cryo, I know that cryo can do a lot for even steels that not necessarily are great. Like I like some of the 440 and the 440 variants and 420 now that I didn't like before because they're cryo treating them, and it kind of completely changes that steel.
Yeah, every steel pretty much, except for the high carbons, it doesn't really change them a whole lot. It elevates the steel. It just makes them better overall because it just refines the carbides, or I forget what they call that.
The grain structure.
Yes, grain structure.
Yeah,
of the steel. It just refines that, and it's very important that you do it over 12 hours too.
That's what I was going to ask you. How long do you usually leave them on a dwell time?
I finished heat treat, like I did heat treat today. I finished around, I want to say 1 or 2 heat treat, and they'll stay in overnight, and probably like 9 o'clock. I'll take them out of cryo and let them cool down a bit, or warm up rather, and then I'll go into tempering.
That's what I was going to say. So you do you do a quench, or do you? I mean, I'm pretty sure you do a quench. You don't go straight into the liquid nitrogen, right?
Yeah, no. Yes, I quench with aluminum plates, forced compressed air, and then they go into liquid nitrogen. They over 12 hours. Then I take them out and I temper them for 2.5 hours twice on every blade. But if it's warped, especially bad, I'll do multiple tempers to try and eliminate as much warpage as possible.
Relieve a lot of that stress in the steel.
Yep.
I got some one time, not a few years ago. I got some unknown Damascus. It was Alabama Damascus. It was some really good looking steel. We did a quick test on it to see what the pattern was going to look like and everything. And I heat treated and then tempered, and then I did the grind. And we even did a two cycle temper on it. And then I was going to do the actual nitro bluing with the chemical bluing with that heated solution of the nitrites, the all those chemicals. And when I put it in that solution, it actually took a big bow because we hadn't relieved all the stress that was still in that steel from heat treat and temper. I probably should have given it 2 more cycles, but we didn't even think about it, and everything looked fine. And we put it in that chemical bluing solution because it's hot. It's well above boiling temperature for water. And it just, it completely bent at the very front of the knife. And I was like, wow, how about that? So yeah. And at that point, there's no real way to straighten that. You basically just have to, I turned it into a different knife. We're like, all right, well, just here we go. And I just etched it as opposed to trying to chemical blue it. So I wanted to, so Christian Ortiz is here. This is Christian Ortiz. If you guys don't follow him, he owns Cerberus Knives. He designed the Arian and makes a lot of scales for stuff. Tarot Tough. That's exactly what I was looking for. Tarot Tough. Patina Turner says,
I don't think I've ever used that before.
Okay, I thought that's what it was that he had on that knife. My wife and kid just pulled up. If you happen to hear noise, guys, it's because my wife is going to close the garage door when she comes back in. I appreciate everybody, thinking of my wife. She actually was feeling enough better this afternoon. Instead of me canceling this, she took my daughter to her after school math program. So yeah, that was interesting because, like you were saying, like if it's got a little bit of a warp, sometimes you'll just temper it a couple more times. What do you usually temper? What temperature do you usually temper at for 3V? Out of curiosity,
385.
385.
Yes, is the particular temperature that I use, and that's for each 2 times individual. I let them cool in between 2.5 hours.
Okay.
So like normally most people do 2 hours, but I just do it a little bit longer. Just
now I've made most of my knives in 20 CV and S125V, and those are those super high temperature heat treats that you have to do.
Yeah.
And you're taking that to 2200 degrees and then quenching. And so the temper cycle for that is 2 cycles of 2 hours at 1000 degrees. That's tempering at 1000. And you get some really, really good results.
Yeah. But if you don't temper at that and you use what I'm saying, the temper, but you have to use cryo with the low temper.
Yeah.
But the low temper, it boosts the corrosion resistance a lot for those CPM steels. Yeah, well,
CPM steels, and I've noticed, and I was trying to explain this to somebody. They were like, well, like I have knives that I made a knife for a guy, and he's like, I have other knives in 20 CV with the same finish, and they didn't rust. And I was like, you have an industrial heat treat where they're taking it way lower. They're not taking it all the way to 2200 degrees, and they're not doing that double temper cycle. And I was explaining to him, I was like, the amount of heat and everything you're doing and the way you're tempering it, you're consolidating more of that chromium that would come to the surface and give you your rust resistance, and turning it more into carbides that are more distributed throughout the steel. That's why it holds its edge so much better at that 64 Rockwell than it does at a lower Rockwell, but you give up a little bit. What you gain in edge retention, impact resistance, things like that, you lose something somewhere else, which a lot of times is the rust resistance.
Yes.
So heat treats a fun thing. Like I never thought there would be that much to it until I started hanging out with Elliot, and I learned that he's like, oh no, this is how it works. So you're just basically you're taking that to a state where it's still solid, but things are allowed to move inside the molecular structure of the steel. And I was like, I'm confused. Because everyone thinks of steel as being solid. They don't think of like how much space is actually steel in that.
Yeah. It's like food.
Yeah. It's like adding salt to hot water.
Yep.
So, oh, sorry, Kat. Sorry. I know that you make a lot of different type of knives, different shapes, but what is your favorite blade shape?
The spade is my favorite, which I don't have the what's his name.
So if you guys that are on Apple iTunes, John just walked away to go find one.
This is the spade. So what would you call that? It's like a spear, basically.
Yeah, well, yeah, I like that's almost like it's like somewhere in between a drop point, a clip point.
Yeah. And another one that I like a lot, which is like a modified drop point, I guess, something like that.
Nice.
I always clip off the ends. The point goes a little bit lower because I like my point more center.
So you were saying that you basically started this pretty much right out of high school, right? And turned this into a full-time.
Yeah. Still in school, I think. 17, I think. My time has gone by so fast since then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I was still in school. I was just graduating. Yeah.
So somebody had asked earlier. This is your full-time. This is your full-time job, right? You do this full-time. Like that's the only way you're going to be able to do that many knives in a week is if it's your full-time gig.
Yep, 6 days a week. Sundays, my break day, and then the rest is just work.
So Murky Ocean on Instagram said this man needs a beard to go with that stash.
I can't grow a beard now. I would if I could, but I really can't.
Do you know who else? Do you know who else can't grow a beard?
Who?
This guy right here, Christian Ortiz, can't grow a beard for crap.
Yeah.
He's Patchy McAdams. It's just.
Yeah.
So you got all these designs you do. How many knives do you figure you've made since you were 17?
It's probably close to 1,000, I want to say, because you just look at my Instagram posts, and most of my posts are, and there's quite a few knives that I don't post on Instagram that I've made, and we're at like 700 Instagram posts, I think. Jeez. I think that's so. It's probably we're closing in on 1,000. Yeah,
1,000 knives. So that's
last year I made 400 knives. I think it was around there.
So you said you started with 17. You're 21. So what is that, like 4 years?
Yeah, something like that.
So that's a lot of making knives.
Doesn't feel like 4 years at all. It feels like yesterday I started.
Time flies whether you're having fun or not sometimes.
Yeah.
So now did you start it as a hobby, or was it just like right out the jump you were like, oh, I never
planned on selling knives. I was trying to make the perfect EDC knife for myself.
That's kind of how it starts, isn't it? That's how it starts when you come up with it. You're like, you're like, I don't like, my big one was I never liked the combat knives we had. So I designed my own, and I was already retired when I did it. I'd already retired from the military. I was like, well, maybe let me take a shot at seeing if I could make one that would have made sense to me. So I just don't, I can't stand in front of the grinder that long. Well, mainly because I'm old and I'm busted up, and to spend that many hours in front of the grinder, I can't walk the next day. It's just, I have to temper that a lot, which I really hate. It gets frustrating because I would love to just be able to do that. But after like an hour or so of grinding, I've got carpal tunnel and my shoulders are all screwed up. And after like an hour, I'm like, I gotta go sit down for like 2 hours and do something else. So, which it does get frustrating to want to be able to do it something and not be able to. Yeah. So that's why I was going to ask you, are you thinking about trying to get some of these designs done in a production fashion so that you could like have some passive income instead of having to be at the grinder 24/7?
No, I don't. I rather No, I rather move on, do something else with my life if I can't do it like complete hands-on. I don't think my designs are that good that they, deserve to be, mass produced or whatever. But I think there's value in it being handmade by me. Completely me, heat treat, everything Kydex, it's all done by me. So I want to keep it that way. And if I can, I'd probably just try to find another job or something. I'd always do knives on the side.
Always do stuff on the side. Yeah.
Nice. I don't think unless I, get my hand chopped off or something. I'm never
always gonna be doing knives. That's I
like knives.
I'm actually like I do this. I have a sharpening service, so that's how this all started. Was I had become a professional sharpener. I was sharpening knives for Ferrum Forge for their mid-tech knives, and as much as I like making knives, that's what I'm really passionate. I love sharpening knives. I like the aspect of being able to find that angle and find the perfect match for a blade. This blade might be a little thicker. What's the angle? And people are like, what angle do you sharpen your knives at? And I was like, I honestly couldn't tell you, because I take each knife to a different angle. It just determines the knife is going to tell me how it wants to be sharpened. And people are like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. And I was like, that's because at this point I've sharpened more knives than most people will ever see in a lifetime, unless it's you, because you've made more knives than most people will ever see in a lifetime. So, I mean, you can kind of feel it when you do a belt edge too. Like, where's this knife want to be at? What's that edge really kind of need to be at for it to fit that blade shape?
Yeah. My edges are very basic though on the knives I sell and the regrinds that I found. Just a 220 grit water cooled belt that I finish off some green compound on a leather strap. So very basic, but yeah.
That's still better than a lot of factory edge. Like, I've seen some of your knives when they come straight back from right after they're made, and some of the regrinds and everything. And I'm going to tell you, it's still way better than a lot of the factory edges and any Benchmade factory edge, any of them. I like to bash on Benchmade, because they used to be pretty much top tier knives. And when I was coming up in the military, and now they kind of just, they bank on their name, and then and they do. Yeah, my wife was closing the car. Snuzz, sorry. And then she came over to pet Shop Cat. So, is there what have you got coming up? Like, have you got anything new coming up that you're working on? I know that you're saying you're trying to buy a house, and you're going to basically, would that be something you're moving into a bigger shop, maybe expand and do more stuff?
Maybe not super bigger, but just more mill is the biggest thing for me, because then I can start messing around with folders.
Oh yeah, we were talking about because a lot of people ask me making a folder. I like making knives. It's fun for me. I enjoy it, and I've seen what goes into making folding knives, and I'm like, that takes some of the fun out of it, because then there's so much mathematics and stuff like that, and you've got to learn how to you have to learn how to use CAD and all the design, and none of that seems fun at all to me. Now, I know that Elliot Williamson loves it. Christian Ortiz right here. What's Christian say? Definitely consider myself a large portion of what I've learned. Spending time with Mike at the shop. But like, I didn't teach him how to make a folding knife. He did that on his own. He likes working in CAD and using like a 3D printer.
Stuff. That stuff's really cool.
I'm an older guy. I that's not something I'm wanting to try and learn. What are you doing? So that's not something I'm even really interested in doing. People are like, oh, you should get this, you should get that. And and I was like, I just don't see me at this point in my life at almost 50 trying to learn how to use CAD and all those other things. So it just kind of doesn't make sense for me at that point. But then I also see the value in, the flip side of it is I'm really good friends with Elliot, and he has rendered all of my designs, but I can't always go to Elliot and say, hey, I know you're busy, but can you give me a render file for this knife? At some point, I think if I want to continue, I'm going to have to be able to render my own files, or I'm going to have to pay someone to do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can see that as a skill that some people want to learn, but I have no interest in it at all. It's graphic design stuff, just nothing that I even find interesting. What was this? Would you ever want to move to a different state in order to get some property with a mill?
Well, I kind of did that sort of. You know, my parents moved before I was able to get a house in New Hampshire. I was originally in New York. First 20 years of my life, I spent in New York. I was, raised in school in New York. Only recently did I move up to New Hampshire because the laws are better, taxes are better, everything's pretty much better in New Hampshire.
New York is horrible.
Yeah, New York is. It's definitely the worst. I don't know if it's worse than California, but it's pretty bad.
What's this? Oh, wait, are you talking to me, Greg? I didn't know. I think Greg might have been talking to me because then he says your daughter could help you figure that out.
Okay.
And then Aiden says you can teach an old dog new tricks still, Mike. I don't think so. Not this one. This one's pretty much went too far down the path of not being on the learning curve anymore. So yes, about the CAD stuff. Okay. Guys, I meant to say it's Friday. Cheers. Happy Friday. I haven't said that yet. You're 21. Are you drinking?
Yeah, some light beer. But yeah.
That's not light beer. That's kind of water. You know what? You know why you know why American light beer is like sex in a canoe?
What? Why?
Because they're both fucking close to water.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, well, I'm lightly. I'm 170 pounds, so three Budweisers, and that's still like water beer, even the non-light Budweisers. That'll be the trunk.
Yeah, it's was this Beardo says coffee for Mike. I'm quite famous for drinking coffee at all hours of the day and night. As a matter of fact, Beardo, I didn't have any coffee made, so I had a NOS about an hour ago before we did this. I've been drinking coffee all day. So Snuzz says that's soda pop. That's soda pop. So I got to ask you, so who are some of the knife design? This is I'm in the stuff that I know I typically would ask. Who are some of the knife designers and knife makers that you kind of look at and you're like, oh man, one of these days I'll have something that's that good, or I'll have a design that is that popular and things like that?
That's a tough question. Most of it is folders and stuff because things can always improve, but for fixed blades, there's not really much more that I could do to improve on them. I mean, I could use someone else's design if that was, something that was really good. But for folder, the S&G, I really like the Strider S&G. If I could ever make a folder like nice, I would be really happy. Some other guy too.
I always thought that if I was going to have a knife and I would get to a point where I was good enough at it that I would have a fixed blade like that Bob Terzuola fixed blade that he just recently put up. I mean, like I know Bob and I've seen some of Bob's work. It's amazing that like it looks like it was computer generated and things like that. And then you watch him do it and you're like he's doing that by hand. You're like, wow, that's him doing that. Like all the cutouts and all the fine detail work. You would think, like a lot of people think at this point, it's 2021. They're like, oh, he's using a CNC mill. But if you watch Bob do it, he's doing all of that by hand. It's a hand ground. It's a hand operated mill. He's running the cranks, or he's using a drill to run the mill at speed, and he's the one that's doing, I accidentally clicked on that. I don't know what that was. But you see him doing like the lock bar interface and the lock bar cutout, and he's doing it by hand. And the guy's not a spring chicken anymore. He's up there. Bob's pushing 80. I have one of his 75 for 75 for his 75th birthday that he did a couple years ago. That's here at the house. And I'm like, wow, that's like to still be that, like that, to have that steady a hand still at 75. That's saying something.
Yeah, something. Sorry.
So what was this? Greg Gutfield says too much beer makes my head spin and then I vomit. I don't think that's just a you thing, Greg. That's just a people thing.
Yeah.
So what was this? I'm that was me at Tristan. I don't know. I don't know what we're talking about. Muscle memory. Yeah, that's some good muscle memory. So what is I know I've seen a lot of your knives. Do you if somebody wants you to, would you do like a polish finish or specific finish? Like,
I'm very strict in my like grits that I do, because the belts that I use are very expensive. What all knife makers use are very expensive belts. You know, like $10 a piece, usually around there. I use the Norton ceramic ones, and it makes a lot more sense if I standardize what I use, so I don't have to get a ton of different grits, and it just gets really complicated. I really don't have the room for that type of stuff. Maybe down the road I'll offer finer grits, but currently we're sitting at like 80 grit. Trizac is the highest I'll go.
80?
Yep, and that's what that Mordax is. You got the regrind. All the regrinds are Trizac. I think there's only like
but you use
floating around.
Now I don't know where I put it. So I was looking at that, but that doesn't look like an 80 grit. So that's just that.
The Trizac belt, it's built a little bit different than a normal thing. I don't know if you can see that. There you can see it.
Yeah, I can see it. I've used a couple of them before.
Yeah. And they wear out really quick, and they're expensive. But the finish, because it removes material fast.
Guys, I don't know if it's just me, but I'm getting a lot of breaking up. We may have to. I think. Can you hear me, John?
Yes, I can hear you. I never lost.
Okay, yeah, we broke up really bad. I don't know if it's just on my end or what. I'm not lying. The weather is weird here. It's kind of raining, and when it does rain, I kind of have a tendency not to get internet as well down here in my garage. So no mirror polish. Oh, I knew there was no people that said that. I am going to say though that for an 80 grit, that's still fairly fine. Like that looks really good for an 80. Because when I do an 80 grit, it does not look like that. It looks like I rubbed it with a rock. Well, I usually take stuff to like 220.
Yeah, 220 is a really nice finish.
Yeah, it's a really decent finish. And then if you hit it on that that medium conditioning belt, it looks nice, and you get almost that rainbow look that you get from almost like what am I thinking? The burger grinder finish that you get on some knives. You get almost the same thing, where it almost looks like a rainbow, but it's not that coarse, rough, like you'd say. It looks much coarser than it actually is. I think it looks pretty good. Yeah, so it's not just me that it's choppy. That's what I was afraid of. Shopcat just came back in. So the first knife. So we talked about it. What was that first knife? You said that your dad got you a knife, but do you remember what knife it was? Your first knife?
It was made in Pakistan, I'm pretty sure. It was a really small folder with it's probably like bronze bolsters and some Pakistani wood on either side.
So it was just like
with a nail neck on the blade. So
it's just just a little fairly cheap folding knife.
Yes, yeah, very cheap folding knife.
It's always one. So I know you make knives, but what companies do you think right now are really kind of just doing a really good job overall in the knife world as far as like production style?
Production. Well, I mean, it's almost production style. If you can get on his books, Alex Steingraber knives.
Yeah,
love his knives. I plan to get one someday if I can ever get on his books. But his stuff sells out really quick. For more production stuff, the Demco knives. I really like their knives. I paid $700 or something for one of his 8015s. And the locks are very unique. You've got the shark lock now.
Yeah, I love the shark lock.
Comes out like that, and it's a really it's a neat lock on a market with so many frame locks, titanium frame locks. So it's a refreshing thing to see.
For a long time, I thought I liked the frame locks so much better. And I think it was just because I hadn't gotten any really good frame liner locks.
Yeah.
And I always like lockbacks because they're truly ambidextrous. And then I got that shark lock, and I was like, oh yeah, I really like the shark lock. That's a nice innovation into the knife industry, where you've got something that is easy to use. It is ambidextrous, but it's not so, it's not so you don't have to use both hands. So it's kind of like that difference between, it's kind of like a somewhere in between, like an axis lock and a lockback. But the action on it is so good.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to try one with washers. I don't think they make them, but you could probably mess around with it to have something.
I've got a buddy that measured the internals, like took it apart, measured it, and got some phosphor bronze washers for it. And after it got broke in real good,
yeah, I'm sure
it was smooth. But I'm not a fan of washers over bearings. I find that bearings always have a smoother action. It felt different, but not better. You know what I mean? There was a lot more surface.
Yeah, friction.
It went from being what it was, which was super, super smooth. It was still smooth, but it was more like a Sabenza. You couldn't really, like, you had to use the thumb stud. You couldn't flip it out like you could with the bearings in it, unless you oiled it unless you just kind of just soaked it with oil.
Sure. Yeah. I like I'm not a really big fan of bearings, just in general. I like washers, but that's probably just me. A lot of people like bearings.
Well, okay, so why? I mean, just out of curiosity.
The majority of the reason why is because I don't like stuff getting in my bearings. I like the simplicity of just a bronze washer, phosphorus.
I can see that. I have both, and I like both, but I prefer the bearings because even though you can get stuff down in them, I find that if I have, say, my Sabenza, or when I had Jared's Spartan Harsey, if that gets dirty, you have to take that apart. There's no way you can't just wash that out. A lot of times with a knife that has bearings, you can just put it under some hot water and clean that out and re-lubricate it. And it just seems easier sometimes. But yeah, you're right. The bearing knives will feel gritty way before a washer knife will.
The Chris Reeves ones are a bad example of like what washers could be with, in regards to not attracting lint and stuff. Because the inside of the scales on the Zabenzas and stuff are sandblasted, so it just attracts stuff like crazy. And it sticks in there. It's really hard. The 8015 that I had like really big washers, and that thing just was like a tank. In regards to dirt and grit, it was just very sealed and tight. It's great.
So Murky Ocean, Mike, are you ever going to do your Kiridashis again? I actually have 2 of them ready to grind. Now that I have the electrical taken care of and my breakers shouldn't be tripping. They took care of it this afternoon. I have a couple that are ready. I'm just waiting. Like I've told everybody that I have them available. I'm just waiting for somebody to roger up because I'm not going to spend the money on abrasives and things like that to try and just do one. So if somebody wants one, I've got 2 that are ready to go, and I have 2 that are for sale already done. Where is the Sea Snake made? I've told you guys before. So my Sea Snake design is made with Artisan. So Artisan is an American company, but they make their knives in a factory in China. So, what was this? Beardo the Weirdo. Much what? Oh, how much? So those without sheath, I'm selling those like usually about 110, 120, something like that. By the time I grind them, I have to get a leather belt though to do the finish on them. I don't have a leather belt. That was at Elliot's shop, and that got thrown away because I had a cut in it anyway. I don't know if you've seen. They're talking about when they're talking about a Sea Snake. I don't even think I have one over here. I have a small little Kiradashi a small little fixed blade that I designed. That's a Warrenclyffe style that I had released as a production knife. I'd made a bunch of custom ones, and
seen that design before.
You have? Yeah, I like it. I always wanted a nice little utility fixed blade, and I just said, screw it. I designed one. I worked construction for a couple years or about a year here until COVID, when I was told I couldn't go back to work. I got told I had to leave the job site and I wasn't allowed to work because I have an autoimmune disorder. But I had, the whole time I was there, I was like, when I did construction and when I was in the military, I always wanted a small little fixed blade that was like ready to go. And then more so once I started working on construction sites, I was like, a small little fixed blade, like a small Warncliffe, like a 3-inch blade would just be about perfect, nice and thin, nothing that nothing you're trying to cut zip ties or anything with, but just small stuff like cutting line, cutting filter fabric and cutting plastic and things on the job site. So, actually, guys,
construction too.
Say what?
I worked construction too part-time when I was 16.
Yeah, so it's nice because especially because you're wearing gloves. You have to wear gloves on a construction site, and it gets to be a pain to try and fight with a folding knife, and you got to take your gloves off to lock it, and unless you got something like a triad lock, which has got the big lock bar area on it. But so everyone said, what's John carrying? We know you got your Norseman, Mike. Actually, you guys are wrong. We'll ask John what he's got, but what's in my pocket right now is the Deviant, the Kaiser Deviant. So the reprobate is carrying the Deviant. So, but what have you got? What's your EDC today?
I've been carrying this guy probably for a month. It's just a Javelin model with a chisel grind. So it's flat on this side. And then it's got a hollow and then another hollow up here, which it like makes it seem like it's thinner stock. This is 5/32 thick. I do the Kiridashis that they were talking about. I'm sorry, what was that? I stopped carrying a folder probably like last year. So I've just been rocking fixed blades. My fixed blades. Instead, I carry flat blade and a bunch of other stuff. Weird to carry a fixed blade out here because even though it's perfectly acceptable to carry whatever you want out here in California, as long as it's not concealed, it's not the cops I'm worried about. It's every other snowflake liberal latte out here that's going to throw a fit because I'm carrying a knife. So I typically carry a folder. But so that's tricky. I do have my Norseman here, but I'm not carrying it. So that's I finally got one of these. It's my favorite knife of all time. I love this knife. Always wanted one. Those are nice. Yeah, the Grimsby Norseman. So all right, guys. So we're at an hour. And what I had planned was, because I knew everyone was going to have a bunch of questions for John, I didn't try to get too much stuff up front because John is pretty much the first like actual knife maker we've had on the channel. So I knew a lot of people were gonna have questions. I wanted to leave enough time to ask questions to still have story time at the end. So what questions do you guys have for John? And just crazy for you. It's California, Justin, California. Yeah. But Justin, by the way, is the newest paying member. Justin High is the newest paying member for the channel. So John, have you done a hollow grind Spyderco Tough? I can't recall what that design looks like. It's ugly. It is? Yeah, it's real ugly. You can look at some of our questions. I'll try and pull it up and see if I can pull up a picture of the Spyderco Tough. But it's there you go. There you go. There you can answer a question. I'll show you the Spyderco Tough. That's from Jared. That grind, I should read it. That grind on John's knife was interesting. Can he explain it better, how it performs? I have to read that because I forget that we have people that just listen to it on a podcast. So yeah, it's a chiseled hollow chisel grind. So I use the hollow wheel and I'll do this section right here. And the back is also, I've done this on one giveaway knife, but this is just my personal knife. And it was just something I was messing around with to see if I removed the spine material, the majority of the spine material, if it would cut better. Mostly with like food prep and stuff was when you notice it the most. And it does. So it's like probably like a little bit over 1/8 thick stock after that grind. And it cuts like a knife with that grind. And the hollow on the chisel grinds definitely helps a lot. To minimize like the side to side drag that chisel grinds usually have a lot of.
There's that Shemp Tough by Spyderco. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those.
I have seen that. I don't think I've reground any of those.
That's not a pretty knife at all.
It looks like I could do a hollow though. If the top is flat, it's just really.
They're weird. They come up and then that's a really abrupt transition into that upper the spine up at the top. So it's interesting. So there's Jared. What's this? Patina Turner has a great question, but I don't know where it's at. So Patina, if you still have a great question, let's say, let's see. Let me get rid of this. Get rid of that. I don't want to look at that anymore. It's disgusting. Aiden says, sadly, I'm a tough enjoyer. I don't like the tough. Jared says, do you think it cuts better than if it was a hollow on both sides? Does the flat help increase toughness?
Does it increase toughness? Probably not. It does increase cutting performance though, because instead of ramping up, so when a double hollow, it ramps up like this, you have one side that's completely flat, and then only one side that ramps up. So the cutting is enhanced because of that grind shape.
I've talked about it before too. That's why a lot of like your heavy duty like Japanese style kitchen knives are done that way, because it does enhance the cutting performance. And if you have a right-handed person or a left-handed person, you would change that. And what it also does is it pushes the material out of the way more efficiently than a full hollow.
Yes.
Yeah. I have seen some full hollow ground kitchen knives, and I've never thought they were a very good idea to have a full hollow kitchen knife.
Sure.
Like you were saying, like a chisel ground hollow. Yeah. Really, really, really effective. It does change that cutting potential a lot.
The problem with the double hollow kitchen knives is just it wedges into stuff because it's like built like a wedge. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't chop stuff off to the side the way you would want on a kitchen knife.
Let's see here. That was the question. What was the question? Oh, there you go. That was Patina's question earlier. What knife have you reground that made the biggest difference in cutting geometry?
I had one in probably like 2-3 weeks ago. That was it's probably like 0.03 behind the edge, and that was a huge difference. The hinderers are way too thick, in my opinion. They're most of them saber grinds. They're like wedges. I regrind a ton of those. This one is at 60 grit, so it's very rough. I still need to do over here.
Yeah. The hinderers are pretty thick. I mean, they're really robust, but they are really thick. And then I told Jared that when he sent me one, I was like, I really wanted to like it, but the fact was there were just too many issues with some of the ergos, and the fact that it just was so thick that it just didn't cut the way I wanted it to.
Yeah, it's way too thick for a saber ground. I mean, you could go really thin right behind the edge on a saber ground and still be fine for a ton of tasks. The thickness that they're running on, their knives, I mean, that would be good with the hollow, with the over 0.02.
Yeah.
Behind the edges.
Where's the thing? So Jared says, I agree on the hinderers. He said he's going to send you in his Spartan Harsey when I'm done. And I have one thing to say to that. What makes you think you're getting that knife back? That ain't going nowhere. It's staying here. Have you gotten to see the Spartan Harsey?
I have. I reground 2 small ones one small one and then 2 of the large ones, I'm pretty sure.
I really, really like that. It's almost too big and it's kind of garish and over top, because the one that Jared sent me is the Mayan calendar. It's kind of over the top with all the engraving and all that stuff, and it's really big and it's kind of thick. And Jared even said it's kind of thick. He put I think he said he's put it's like 120 or 220 grit edge on it to account for the fact it's thick, just to give it some more bite and some more cutting. But the fact is, with all that being said, it's just such a nice knife in hand, the way it feels, the action and all that you're willing to overlook some of those things that just about it that are kind of like negatives. You're like, but look how cool it is.
Yeah. It's definitely nice.
Patina Turner. Okay, so that makes sense. So I sharpened some knives for Patina Turner. Those came in, and I didn't realize that's who it was. That I did. I sharpened a knife, the Berg Blades Iron Pup, and that's another knife that it's really thick, and it's kind of thick behind the edge. But that's another one of those ones that I was like, I really like this knife enough that even though I know it's not going to cut super great, I still really like it. Like this one. I talk about this in the video that went up today. This knife is way thick. This is an old school Ferrum Forge NTAC in N690, and it is thick behind the edge. I kind of accounted for it by giving it a nice convex edge. But the fact is I can overlook that because I just love this knife so much. And it really is really, really reliable. So Jared has another question that I'm going to let you answer because it is a really good question. I'm not just favoring Jared because he's my friend, but I'm going to let you answer this, and then I'm going to go grab something so I can show it. So I will let you have full screen.
My favorite design that I do is the spade model. I carried this guy. This is the design. This is a G10 cutout that I used to scribe on the blank or steel rather. But yeah, it's like a spirit point. It's not too long, and this is what I settled on when I was trying to design the perfect EDC. I've been EDCing the Javelin recently because it's a little bit smaller, and I've just been messing around with that. But this is definitely my favorite one that I make, the spade. I made a ton of these. It's a nice design overall.
Oh no,
the handle's a little small for a lot of people. But
sorry about that.
I can always make the handle a little bit bigger. I can always do one-offs too. A ton of my knives that I make are like one-offs of models and stuff.
So I just went to go grab it. That Spartan Harsey. It's just so much fun. Like, it's so over the top and everything. But the flip side of it is it's just so much fun. The action on it's so nice. Was this? Does John add it? Wait there. It says John Snuzna says John does add a damn fine sharpening notch too. That's one of the things I was gonna. I'm glad you said that. I'd forgotten. I've seen some of your knives and I was like, you know what? I can appreciate the fact that you understand the fact that people have to maintain their knives, which is one of the things. That's one of the things you have to overlook in this one is there's no sharpening notch. There's no way to maintain that without ruining stones.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people don't like the sharpening notch I do because it's very exaggerated. But you can use probably a lot of designs for over a year, like heavily, and you'll still have plenty of material, plenty of space to sharpen stuff. That's I can show you on this one. That's a big sharpening notch, in my opinion. And this one isn't, crazy big. I've done a lot bigger ones too. It does snag on clothes and stuff, so I can always not do a sharpening notch if you want because it's all made by hand.
Have you ever had somebody ask to like that sharpening tool, but ramp it up so it's almost like a half teardrop shape?
No. Usually they just don't want it at all. If they're asking for some kind of modification.
My favorite is to just do to get a round file and just cut it straight down, and then just get a flat file and just marry it down so it looks like a half a teardrop. And then you don't get so much the snagging and catching on things. You still get all of that, and then you get a smoother transition into that. And that's kind of why I do it, because I do understand that it catches. Sometimes it'll catch on stuff if you don't do it that way. But I'm perfectly fine with that round one. The reason I started doing it was when people would ask for it. They're like, "Oh, can you do one that looks like?" I had talked about it in a video, like the sharpening notch that's on this one is kind of that. Like half here. I'll bring it all the way up so you can see. You can see it. It's round at the back, but then it's kind of like almost a half a teardrop.
Yeah,
where it ramps down, and it doesn't seem to snag on stuff as bad. But yeah, it's kind of like the best of both. What is this? Yeah, you don't, but Cold Steel 4max is looking for a nice slicer, but most EDC knives should be able to slice EDC type stuff. I don't know where we're going with this. There we go. That's the one I was looking for. Have you ever added a finger choil on a regrind?
Yes. Yep. I got to do it on this one. And this is a hinder without a finger choil. And the guy asked for, or the client, I don't know if it's a guy or a girl, asked for a choil on this one.
A full finger choil?
Yeah. So something similar to what they offer normally.
I was going to say, so what are you going to use, like a 1/2 inch contact wheel?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. This guy.
Yeah. That's just about the perfect size for a finger choil. Is that half inch contact wheel.
Move around a little bit to make sure.
Let's see. Jeremy Russell says, when you make a knife for someone, do you take a request for something like behind the edge thickness, or are your designs just the way you do them?
I can always go thinner if you want. Those are requests I take. Usually, people don't specify. I don't have an option on my website order form. So usually I just go under 0.02 thousandths. Usually just under that is what I normally do for most designs. Kitchen knives, I go thinner. Yeah.
What's the thinnest you've ever ground one? Just out of curiosity.
I think the thinnest knife I ever ground, which it was so close to it was a hollow grind. It was popping through the other side. I mean, it was whisper thin. That went to Carol from Outpost 76.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Z-Wear in 0.094 stock. That's thin stock, and I did a hollow on it. That was really thin. That was whisper thin.
We were messing around on a live feed the other day, just on the channel, just like a daytime live feed. And I pulled out the second knife I ever made was a knife I made for my daughter as a gift for her, because I didn't have any money to really get much. She liked knives at the time, and I made one for her. And I didn't realize, I always man, I ground that super, super thin. And I went back and we were in a live feed and I measured it, and I ground it to 0.0093, I think. And I was like, that is officially the thinnest knife I've ever made.
Yeah, that's pretty thin.
That everything else, the only other knives that I've ever I made a custom sea snake for a buddy of mine, and I ground that at 0.00, was it 0.011, and then I ground another one. It was at 0.011. But that 0.0095 or 97 was. I was like, wow, I can't believe, because now I'm nervous. I think it was because I didn't really care. I had just started making knives. I didn't really worry about the fact, because it was a free piece of steel. I wasn't worried about am I going to screw this up? Am I going to overheat the edge? Am I going to catch the belt and just take a big chunk out of it? I think I was just doing it and then just let it happen. Now if I tried to make a knife that thin right now, I'd start getting nervous.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm doing I did the one that was 0.011 was a hollow grind. And I was like, wow, I was like a full hollow. I was like, because that it's thicker at the edge than it is behind. I was like, we're going to reach a point where I'm just going to turn it into foil. And there's just not going to be any knife left. I'm just going to punch through. And I was like, I don't have another S125V for that. So you start being conservative when it means that you're going to get paid. When you're doing it for free, just for fun, you're you'll do stupid stuff as a knife maker.
For sure. Yeah.
Let me see here. What is it? Name off the type of grinds you offer, John. I'm pretty sure he does compounds as well.
On certain designs, so the Tanto type designs, I will do compound grinds. Normal grinds that I offer are any variation, chisel ground, double hollows, which is just a normal hollow, and full flats. I do not offer saber grinds because I have a belief that they shouldn't exist.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to take you out. I was trying to minimize it back down. I agree. I'm not a fan of saber grinds. They always wind up because I've discovered over the years that the broader the blade, the more time you have to transition it. But if you have a broad blade and you do a saber grind, you've limited how much space you have to transition down to a thin behind the edge thickness and still support. You could do it, but it's going to be kind of blunt, and it's going to, it's not going to cut well because the transition is too steep. Like the Benchmade 940, as much as I like that knife, it doesn't transition far enough to be a real good cutting implement. It's real thick.
Yeah. There's just way too many knives, production knives that are saber ground way. Full flat and hollow is definitely the elevated road.
Yeah. Do you have you ever done full convex grinds?
No. I've done saber convex on one knife, I think, one or two knives. I don't offer that that was like a side thing that I was just messing around with.
I'm a fan of a convex. I did one convex. I made one forged knife in my entire life. I would never do it again. And it was out of a railroad spike. I had a friend that at the time, he had decided he wanted to make knives, and he'd gotten really good at it. He did some Damascus, like motorcycle chain Damascus and things, and it was all hand hammered Damascus. And then he got to where he realized that he had taken what was a hobby and turned it into a job. And when you do that, then you no longer have a hobby, and you have to do the thing is, like, if you have a hobby, you can do it when you want. If you turn your hobby into a job, you don't have a hobby to get away from that. It's now just a job. And he really kind of, like, he was like, I'm going to sell my forge. He's like, there's a guy coming to pick up all the equipment. I was like, oh, we had always said I was going to come up and I was going to make a knife. And so he had a railroad spike, and he goes, I got a couple of railroad spikes. Come up, we'll make a railroad spike knife. And I was like, okay. And we got up there, and then I realized that I don't like forging a knife. Like, I was like, you used to think this was fun? This was your hobby? And he goes, yeah. I was like, I don't know if we can still be friends anymore. This is the dumbest hobby I've ever seen.
Sure.
But so we did it. And then the flip side of it wasn't enjoyable. He was one of those guys that just couldn't, he couldn't teach someone something. He had to basically, like, he couldn't let you do it. He couldn't just tell you what to do and then let you do it. He had to kind of step in and take the tool and, like, no, like this. And which is why when I didn't think I would ever get into making knives, and I met Elliot, and Elliot Williamson basically was like, all right, there's a grinder. That's how you put a belt on it. There's your speed control. Here's a piece of metal. Don't fuck it up. I'll be out here if you hurt yourself. And I was like, that's it. He came in and he let me make a knife. And that's a lot better approach, I think, a lot of times. And it was a lot more pleasant. So Greg Gutfield asked, are your kitchen knives more camp cooking or actual kitchen cooking?
More camp. The model is. I do make, like, more kitchen knife style in length and design. I don't have that as, like, a model, though. So I have a design, though, that I do use for people that want something more dedicated to just kitchen use. But the normal model it's like a crossover. Most of my knives are like jack of all trades, master none type stuff.
Yeah, I've seen a few of your knives. And they're pretty robust, pretty solid. Something that you're not going to be concerned about damaging or breaking or any of those things. What was it? Snuznus says the 940 is a wedge. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. And I don't know why I like it as much as I do. I just always have loved that knife. It's just one of those things that until someone gave me one as a gift, I just couldn't justify the price for any of that stuff. That, like, I just didn't see the price there as commensurate to the quality I was going to be getting. But you give it to me for free and I'm good with it.
Sure.
So Todd Carr says, have you done many regrinds on knives that have been sharpened a lot where the thickness behind the edge gets too thick? Or are they mostly new knives that are new and too thick to begin with?
I've done definitely a ton that were like completely blasted. Like, I mean, probably points just because they've been sharpened so long. But the majority are probably like a month of use or something on them. Not brand new. I don't do a whole lot of, like, brand new knives. But most knife people don't use their knives crazy hard, so it's hard for me to tell if they are brand new or not. But most of them are factory edges. It's not like back in the day where you got a knife and just used it until you fell apart. Like, I remember when I was younger and I thought I had a lot of knives. I had like 5 knives. My dad was like, well, he had like a handful of knives that he used for different things, little folding knives, like for specific purposes. He had a little trapper and he had a small little folding skinning knife and things, because we did hunt and things like that on the farm a lot. Sure. But then now I look and I'm like, I sit here and I can literally pull knife after knife after knife out of a case that I've got sitting here next to me when I talk to people on the show. And I'm like, how did I get to this point? I've now realized that I'm a knife hoarder. Sure. Sure.
There should be a show on one of the outdoor channels that's knife hoarders, right?
Yeah.
So how many knives do you have, like, in your personal collection? Do you have a lot of stuff, or do you just basically like play with the stuff you make for a little bit and then get rid of it?
I used to have around 20 folders. I gave a lot of them away. I probably have like 7 maybe right now. And most of them are like cheap Spydercos that I've modded a lot, and I don't want to give away because they're disheveled.
Yeah,
but
and they're Spydercos. Why would you want to offload that level of shit onto someone?
Sure. Yeah. So yep, only a couple folders. I got probably like 5 to 7 folders maybe in my case.
I wound up going that route where I have a lot of like the really fancy folders. Like I have a couple of Elliott Williamson's hand carved Maker's Choice knives and stuff like that. And that kind of led me down that weird route where I was like, ooh, like you start off and you got like, you're buying like $15, $20 knives. And then the first time you get that $100 knife, you're like, wow, that's an expensive knife. And then you get a $100 knife, you carry those for a while. And the next thing you know, you got a $200 knife and you're like, wow, that's the most expensive knife I've ever owned. And 6 years later, you're like, $1,200. That's not out of the realm of possibilities.
Yeah.
It's an addiction. It's an addiction, guys. We need a therapy group. What was this? Okay, there you go. Have you ever done a regrind on a 940?
Yes, I have. How many? Not many. I probably like 3. I want to say around 3 I've done.
So on a 940, what do you find? A hollow, or do you just thin the entire thing back a little further?
I'm pretty sure it was hollows. Yeah. And the maker mark is, if I remember correctly, is like over, it's like half over. So like half of it grinds off when I do the hollow.
So like you're saying like half of the way up to the, or you're talking about the bird,
yes,
butterfly.
Butterfly. Yeah, half of it gets ground off when I hollow. So that's probably another reason why a lot of people don't do it, because it kind of looks janky if like half of it is gone. And I don't have a good process to remove the rest of it.
So when you do it, what's the cutting performance? Because I'm just curious, because I have another blade for this, and if you're only charging $55, that's something I would look at, because these are thick. And I wouldn't send this one because the blade that's in this one was a gift, but like, like how's the cutting performance comparatively? Because it is, the reason I'm asking, because it is thick, and then you get into that hollow, and then what you've got is, like you were saying, like a wedge.
Yeah.
I'm just curious what you thought of the cutting performance with them after you did a hollow on them. It's
improved, but it's not dramatic. Like with the Mordax, that's a dramatic change.
Oh yeah,
it's such
absolutely
a wide hollow. So, but yeah, the Hinderers, it's a decent change. But there's a lot of guys that just want the grind lines, and I don't like doing those regrinds, but I can't say no, obviously.
Yeah, it's big. I've done stuff that I told customers I didn't think was a good idea. You're like, oh, I'll do what you're asking me.
Yep.
I don't think it's a good idea, and I think you're going to be unhappy in the long run. And then they get it, and they're like, well, this is shit. Why'd you do this? I was like, because you told me to. Would you like me to send you back the email?
Sure.
I had a guy, just in case, because this was doing sharpening. I wasn't making a knife at the time. I had a guy that wanted me to bring the edge in to a 17 inclusive. And I was like, you mean 17 per side, right? He goes, no, 17 inclusive. And I'm like, I don't think that's what you want. And I still had a fixtured system at the time, and the bevel was like super, super wide. And then like every time I touched the stone to it, I could just see the edge like move and roll. It was so thin. And I'm like, it's okay, it's done. And I measured out. I was like, that's 17 inclusive. And I said it to him. He's like, what the fuck did you do to my knife? You fucked it up. It won't hold an edge. And I was like, I did exactly what you asked me to. As a matter of fact, I told you I didn't think it was a good idea. Would you like to see the emails? He got mad. He was like, I'm going to tell everyone you're horrible at this. And I'm like, I'll just post up the emails, dude. Like it's, was this, hey, it's not as bad as the guy who has 50 Ford Tauruses in his front yard. So Beardo the Weirdo says there's a term for the guitar player called for guitar players. It's called Guitard. It's the same thing, but you buy one, then end up with 12. Yeah, that's how it is with knives. The next thing you know, they're everywhere. So I have John. You said you had 20. I probably have 30 in that case, and I have boxes of knives that are stored in a closet. And I have knives on every horizontal surface in this garage. When we were at the old house, my wife told me when we got ready to move here, when we sold our house and we started renting this place, she's like, nothing knife in the house. You can have the entire garage because we don't have to park in the garage anymore. And my workshop. But literally she pointed out to me one day, she's like, there is not a horizontal surface in the house where there's not at least like a knife or something knife related or several knives just laying. Kitchen table, the shelf, on top of the refrigerator, on the kitchen counter, on the coffee table, on the bed stand, on the TV stand. She's like, they're everywhere. It's like they're breeding. And I was like, okay. And it's funnier when she does it because she's really animated. My wife's Japanese, and so she does it in Japanese. And I'm like, whoa, slow down. I think you said something about my mother and a goat, but let's bring it down a little bit. Snuzz, you take it easy. If you got to go to work, you got to go to work. On a Friday, that sucks, man. I'll drink one for you, Snuzz. So you're talking about doing a regrind. What steel, what knives have you been sent that you're like, wow, I wish I had not rogered up to do a regrind on this. Basically, it's steel is what I'm talking about. Mostly the steel type.
Pretty much only one, I think. I think it was Maximate.
How'd I know that was coming?
I was using like fresh 60 grit belts, and it just wasn't going anywhere.
That's the only steel that I've told everybody, like, you can't. It's not that I can't sharpen it. It's just I have the stones, the diamond stones and stuff to do it, but the amount of time it takes, like in good conscience, I lose money on it because it takes so long. And no one's going to, I've actually had people that tell me like, what would it cost? And I'm like, what would you be willing to pay? And when they tell me, I'm like, okay, just add $10 to that, because whatever you're willing to pay, it's going to cost you $10 more than that, because I just don't want, because I feel bad, because the fact is it's so time consuming and it's so hard to do. Yeah. And then on top of that, I am, there's materials involved in that. The stones do last a long time. I use the matrix, the diamond matrix stones that Edge Pro has, that David Scott makes. And while they're great and they cut well, they still, they're expensive and they wear out. And people just don't realize, how much? And I'm like, it's a lot. It's going to be almost the price of the knife when you really want to get down to it. When I look at how much time's involved, because it's a really, for as tough as it is, when you get up to the edge, it's really, really delicate. Like it wants to chip. Like it's just wants to chip.
Yep. Especially on
Say what?
Especially on the spider coast, because they usually burn the edge a little bit.
Yeah. So Beardo decides he's going to quote me. I did a video. It was like I was talking about Maximet, and I said more like Maximess, and it's been a thing that I've been stuck with for years. I get some hate because of it. All right, Brandon, I appreciate that. I can't see the likes. So 10 people here have hit the like button. If you don't like Snuzz, we'll track you down. If you don't, Snuzz will track you down and tell you the benefits of 14C28N for the next 2 hours. I might do that too. I love 14C. I had forgotten. Do you ever do anything in 14C in Sandvik?
No, but isn't that very similar to AEBL and Nitro V? Or is it Nitro?
See, everyone says that, but it's absolutely not. Everybody's like, oh, it's so close. And like you can understand this correlation. People will say like, oh, the chemical components are really similar. But having something that's really similar but different, in a lot of things you say, oh, that's apples and oranges. But when you're talking about in steels and chemical composition, and then the things that happen inside that steel at heat treat, I've said it before, that's like comparing apples and watermelons. They're that far apart. 14C, even at a high grit like 5,000, is still super, super aggressive and toothy. It's got a coarser grain structure, less fine carbides. and they're really aggressive. Like 14C, even at 5,000 grit, is like scary. Like wants to like peel. Like it tries to cut you. Like it wants to cut you. It's really toothy, even into the higher grits. Which AEBL is not. I would say that AEBL is closer to CPM 154 in the way it gets slick and almost doesn't feel like it has carbides.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it just was. Here, Jared's like, I'll join in on the 14C rant. Hit the like button, dummies. But Jared said, yeah, he's right. It's much better. It was one of the first steels, and that's one of those steels that I had and then kind of forgot. And then Jared sent me 2 knives in it just recently, and I was like, man, I forgot how much I like it. So you guys might be lucky. I'm working on an OEM project with Jeff Kirkham from Ready Man Group. If you guys know Ready Man Group and all that stuff, like he does a lot of outdoor stuff. Wrote a bunch of books. He owns full30.com. Jeff and I are doing an OEM project, possibly when we get the numbers back, and it might be in a Sandvik. Maybe not 14C, but maybe 12C, which is it's another good one. That's a Sandvik. Let's see. Oh no, not again. What is this? Jeremy Russell says, I've seen a few XM18s you have done regrinds on. I have a few. I've seen a few XM18s you have for regrind. Have you done regrinds on fire tacks? Does that actually make a difference in performance?
Tacks. I think I had a fire tack personally that I regrind, if I'm remembering correctly. It definitely does make a difference. I don't know if it's worth $55. It's obviously up to you. Some people
How
really
much
like
are they?
$55, the regrinds.
Oh, yeah. I thought we were talking about the price of the knife for some reason because I'm an idiot.
Yeah. Fire tacks are kind of expensive. All Hinder and their variants and stuff. Yeah, so I mean, some people like the finish, some people don't. The 80 grit Trizac. Some people just get it because of the finish. It's like that. It definitely improves the cutting performance, and I can make it really thin so that you'll notice it if you want me to. Yeah. So.
Well, I was going to tell you, I'm working on getting. So the stuff that I would need to do some of the refinishing is probably going to wind up being here before too long. If you had somebody that wanted, say they wanted to have something, and they're like, they don't like maybe that 80 grit Trizac, sure. I could always do a stone wash and then a fine ceramic tumble for them here if they wanted to. That would be something where like I could probably do that. I'm trying to see when it's going to happen because the anodizing stuff, my friend bought all that stuff and now has 100% realized he's married. And his wife is like, no, you can't have that part of the garage. And he goes, but that was, it's like, see, you found out. You found out now you are married. It doesn't matter how long you were together. You're married now. And that all changed. And he goes, yeah. And I was like, I told you. My father told me the day of my wedding, I called him from Japan. And my dad was like, all right, boy. He's like, I've given you a lot of advice in your life. He's like, I told you, if you're not ready to stand up in front of God and everyone in a church and tell them that you want to spend the rest of your life with this woman, then you're not ready because it doesn't matter who else heard it. God heard it. And he goes, you took that to heart. He goes, but I'm going to tell you the most important thing. He's like, you could be getting married. He's like, you can be right or you can be happy. He's like, but you ain't gonna fucking be both, boy. So he definitely learned that lesson. So all of his anodizing and refinishing stuff is gonna be here at my house.
Gotcha.
So I think he kind of answered us, but Todd asked, have you ever made anything out of 14C28? Just wondered how it grinds.
No. And now that Mike said this, I want to get some mess around with cryo and stuff. See if I can.
It's actually kind of hard to find. I've been looking for it because when you bring it up, like it pops up, like their alternative for it's AEBL, and I'm like, that's not a good alternative. It really isn't.
When I was trying to get ABL in big stocks and stuff, I was looking at what's his name because it was also a variant, from what I was told, the variant of it, but I couldn't find any.
Well, they say that, but there's, like I said, if you look at, like, I use my knives that are made at Artisan are done in a steel that's called AR RPM 9, which if you look at it on paper, it looks really similar to 9CR. There's just some little changes, and there's a little bit of cobalt in it. And people are like, oh, that's such a small amount. It's just in there, so it's not the same formula. And I'm like, I'm here to tell you they are complete different animals. The fact that it's powdered metallurgy has a lot to do with it. And just those small little changes. I mean, even though like when you look at 20 CV, 204P, and M390, and they basically like a lot of people like to say, it's the same chocolate chip cookie, but just a different recipe book. And there's some, like, they use butter, they use Crisco. And even though those are analogs for each other and they're almost identical, and you get the same kind of qualities in heat treat, I'm not gonna lie, M390 definitely takes a different edge at production heat treat than 20 CV does. M390 in a production heat treat takes an edge that's way more similar to like my in-house heat treat of 20 CV. Those are comparable, but like just that little bit of a difference. I mean, even a tiny bit of difference in the chemical composition can have a vast difference on the other side, and especially depending on how you heat treat it.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce any of that, but word up, Mike. Word up. So I don't know. So Jeremy Russell says, my power supply for anodizing should be here Monday. I wanted to touch on something. I wanted to ask you your thoughts on this because Todd Carr asked this about the 14C. He's asking about how the steel grinds before heat treat. Do you do preheat treat grinds? Because I absolutely have heard from like the people that I took guidance from in making knives are like, do not do preheat treat grinds, especially if you're doing it with a coarse belt, like a 60 grit, because you have now caused stress risers. You take that to 2200 degrees and quench it. There's a good chance you're going to break that. That's going to cause a crack. How do you feel about it? Do you do any preheat treat grinds?
I do almost on everything that's a certain stock thickness. But then I usually leave it at around that thickness. So
okay,
it just takes off the bulk of the material. But there's still a lot of work to be done after heat treat.
Yeah, I haven't ever had it happen, and I've done heat treat for other people. Like I had a guy that he wanted to make some knives. He's like, I don't have an oven. He's like, I got everything but an oven. And he's like, just to do a couple pieces here, and they're so expensive at like some of the other places. And he was a friend of mine, and I was like, yeah, I could do it. Just send it to me and I'll do it. I mean, I still charged him because it's a lengthy process. Heat treat. That's the other thing people don't know about making custom knives. You're talking like just in temper, you've got 4 hours tied up in temper, but you've got 12 hours tied up in cryo, and at least 4 hours or so in the actual heat treat to get it to critical so you can quench it. So, you know, that really adds up, and that's time and money. And people are like, oh, why do custom knives cost so much? I'm like, because you can only do like 4 or 5 blades at a time.
Yeah. I won't do any more than 6 blades in my even eat at a time.
Yeah. It gets kind of hard, especially if you're pulling stuff out and you've got stuff that's soaking too long, and then your packet starts to disintegrate, and then the next thing you know, you got rapid oxidation and pitting, and it's just shitty.
For sure.
What is this? What's John's favorite steel?
Well, favorite steel is CPM3V, and my favorite steel to carry is Crewware or Z-Ware.
I sharpened some stuff in Crewware, and I was really impressed. It's fairly easy to sharpen. I was kind of surprised. I was like, everybody's like, oh, Crewware and this, and I was like, man, it's got to be really hard to sharpen. And it's a lot like for me for like S90V. I like the Crewware, but it does like it rusts a lot easier than some of the others. But especially if you have it, that's what you're saying, cryo. But I've never had it cryoed.
Yeah.
But I was really surprised because everybody was telling me like how tough Crewware is and all this stuff. And then I started sharpening it. I was like, man, this sharpens like a dream. This is great. And took a nasty, nasty edge. Like I was like, ooh, that's a really good edge. And that's one of the things I like about S90V. That's why it's one of my favorite steels is everybody's like, oh, look at the spec sheets. I keep telling people like it's easier to sharpen than a lot of other steels. They're like, oh, look at the spec sheet. That's impossible. I'm like, I don't care about the effing spec sheet. I know I've sharpened a lot of knives in S90V, and I can actually sharpen it easier than a lot of other steels. And then it just holds that. And it's another one of those ones that gets that gnarly, super aggressive, nasty edge that just wants to cut you. So I like the Crewware. I'm kind of impressed. I was thinking about getting a couple pieces of steel and just seeing what the different steels and stuff like that. But like right now, I don't have a heat treat oven, so it would be kind of a pain. Until I get everything. Like I said, Elliot Williamson moved out of his shop into a garage, and he's still getting his stuff set up. And he's told me I can use his shop, but it's just he's in the same kind of situation like I am. We just moved, and everything's still getting all set up. And he had a lot of stuff to set up. So Jeremy Russell says, love crew wear.
Yeah.
So, have you ever done a regrind on like an actual, well, actually, I know you have because Jared has one of Elliot's knives in 20 CV. How did you, like, how was the grinding process on that for Elliot's? I know you did a Master Blaster that Jared had, a regrind on one of those.
It was fine.
It was fine.
Yep. It wasn't, 20 CV isn't super hard. What's his, oh yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, well, not this one. It's the same blade, but it's
9. It's definitely, it's just the feel, but it feels a little bit harder than the Rockwell that Hinder uses on the 20 CV.
It is. He has a specific heat treat that he's requested. He had these heat treated in a specific way. The mid-techs, now I guarantee that ProTech that's in 20 CV felt more like the Hinder because that's more of a production heat treat. Yeah. This was a mid-tech heat treat.
58, probably 59.
Yeah. I know that when we do 20 CV with Elliot's in-house treat that he used to use on his customs and that I use on my customs, you're coming out at 64. And it's a lot harder. Like it's way harder to grind at 64 than it is at like the production heat treat of like 59, 60 ish. Yep. So what was that? The Mordax? The Mordax is in 20 CV, right? I do believe I have it sitting here. I can tell you. I think it's 20 CV.
Yeah.
Pretty sure. Yeah, it's CPM 20 CV. Yeah. I have like, I just, every time I look at it, I'm like, man, that was a freehand regrind because on a knife that had kind of an uneven grind to begin with, and it came out that even. That's pretty impressive. What was that? What is this? What is this? That's apparently sinister. So Duke just took that farted and but the smell woke my wife up. I blamed the dog. I think Elliot chose heat treat facility for those Mordaxes too. I don't know if he really did, to tell you the truth. Elliot and Dave from ProTech were kind of, and I can't get too much into it because I am in a non-disclosure agreement with Farron Forge because I know so much about the ins and outs of their business. But if I remember right, he kind of let Dave run with that, but he just had some minor requirements. I don't think that he picked a lot of the stuff that was actually done because he was kind of surprised and upset with some of the results that came back. So that would indicate to me that I don't think he had as much of a hand in it as you would think. What was this? Not that one. This one. That makes me laugh because I was just thinking about like when the wife and I first got married, and I'm a sailor and my wife being Japanese. And so she had just moved in with me and I would go out drinking and I would get the beer farts and shit. And like a Saturday, I go out on a Friday and then Saturday I had the beer farts. We go to bed and I'd be in bed and I'd fart in a Dutch ovener while she was asleep. And it got to the point where if I like rolled over and moved the blankets, she'd jump up next to the bed. Like, what doing? And I was like, nothing. I'm rolling over. I was like, you think I'm going to Dutch oven your ass and shit? Because I'm a horrible person. So of course you did.
Sure.
This one's for me. Have you ever thought about doing your dashi in another steel? I don't know. I really like the 20 CV for those Kiridashis. They get a really aggressive sticky edge, the way they're done on that. But I mean, to save cost, yeah, I'm looking at some other options. I really want to start making knives again. And it's been a struggle to try and get things lined up, with the move and all that. And I don't have all the equipment. And the flip side of it is, guys, and I have to apologize. I wanted to mention this. If you happen to notice that, like, I've been kind of bitchy and moody and stuff in videos, it's not because I'm on the man cotton. It's I have clinical depression, and it does happen. And sometimes it comes through in videos, and I want to apologize. I don't want that to be some of the the flow of the videos. So I'm trying to keep the bitchiness out of the videos. I think Dave gave him liberties on the steel choice, thus 20 CV, also heat treat since Protect primarily does 1D4. I think he did, but like I'm saying, I think that he just basically let Dave have, he just gave some guidance, like pick some place that can do a heat treat within this specs that he had set. I had a question for you, and I was waiting until the right minute. I want to make sure I got it here. Have you thought, I mean, I know you're busy with all kinds of other stuff too, but somebody had mentioned it earlier. Have you ever thought about doing reblades? This is a Benchmade 940, and it has a 20 CV blade that was done by Transparent Knives. And I don't know if that's something you had ever thought about doing, but that would be, I mean, I'd never thought I would like a rebladed knife, but then I got this in for sharpening. I'm like, okay, I actually kind of like that.
Yeah, his work is incredible.
Yeah.
I would never, no.
No?
Only regrinds. It would take, it's a lot of work. I think Benchmade's probably are one of the easier ones because you don't have a D10 ball, but it's still a ton of work.
I had another reason behind that too, because you don't have to be as spot on, because Benchmade's come from the factory with a lot of blade play. So, you know, screw it. You don't have to be as exact.
Yeah. But yeah, it would take away from fixed blades, and I rather make knives. I have the most fun making knives of my models. Regrinds are kind of something just I offer because I think way too many production knives are way too thick.
Yeah, there are, and I've noticed that. So that's kind of starting to change. There's a lot of knives out there now. We Knife Company has a couple knives. The Riffle came out really thin. Concept Knives had one that I have here that Jared over at Neves Knives sent me, which is the Cryo, which I looked at it and at first I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like this knife, and then I got it and I was like, wow, it just screams through stuff. Like, it is so thin. It's 0.010 or 0.011 behind the edge thickness on both of those knives. Just screams through material. This one is 0.01 behind the edge, and just super thin. And I'm like, wow, I have so many thick boy knives in my case, and I used to love them, and I'm like, oh, this cuts so well. And then I grab them out of my case now, and I go back and I'm like, these are hot trash. I still love them, but I'm like, I don't cut anything with them anymore, because you just realize that, like, wow, what was I thinking? Why did I think this cut so well?
Sure.
So, what was this? I already asked him that, Jared, and he said he would not do a production dirt. He already had said, you had said that you personally would rather just that they were all made by you.
Yes. Yeah, I want to keep as hands-on as possible with me. I think that would be the best route.
Yeah. That's why if I buy a Benchmade, I check with my local shop. So Jeremy Russell saying, that's why if I buy a Benchmade, I buy it from my local shop. I do my own QC. I check centering, blade grinds. That's great. There's a lot of us that live in areas like here in California. I don't have a knife store within probably 30 miles of here. Like, it'd be an hour-long drive to the nearest store. I think that the closest, like, high-end knife store I have would be Recon One, and that's way up in, like, LA area. And then outside of it's like PVK in Vegas, which is a 5-hour drive. So, I mean, I have to buy, like, if I buy a Benchmade, if I were to buy a Benchmade, I just buy it online. And if it came in, I just send it back and be like, yep, this thing's shit. So, so we got like 15 minutes left at the 2-hour mark. I always like to finish with a story. So pick something that happened to you is relatively humorous, probably along the knife making route, like doing something on a Scotch-Brite wheel and it throws it across the shop. You got to take 15 minutes to find it, or dumping hardware and you got to pick up screws. What's the weirdest, funniest thing that has happened to you? And if you can't think of something like that, then just anything weird or funny that happens.
I can't really think of anything in the shop that was like funny. Mostly just stuff like, losing screws and stuff, which is a pain in the ass.
Oh, there's a lot of cursing and swearing when you take somebody's knife apart. You drop the hardware. You're like, oh no.
Yeah. For some of the hinders, which is like really a pain in the ass, because I have to remove the stop pin to do the grinds.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes this guy will, the little like ridges on it will pop off, and it will just pass through the blade. So that it'll just pass right through with no friction.
Yeah.
And that's 2 times before I knew how to weld. That happened, and I had a spare one from it. Happened to my personal hinder too, so I used that, and thank God it actually worked. But since I know how to weld now, I will just use a tape, and I'll just put spots on the center to add friction, and that solves that.
I took I had a customer send me it was a Brian Nadeau Sharp by Design Typhoon. One of his old school in-house ones, the big one. And this guy sent it to me, and Brian's knives. I don't know if you've ever tried to take apart a Sharp by Design. And they're just a night, like it's so tight. Like you have to have you have to have tools to do it. Like you've got, like you're fighting with it. So usually what I go ahead and I set myself up, and I have a drill chuck to get the pins out once I get it apart. But usually you've got to have like a flathead screwdriver that's wrapped with electrical tape, and some sort of device to pry them apart and work your way apart. And then even then, once you get it apart, you take a drill chuck and you crank it down on the pins to get the pins out. Like it's just a nightmare to get them out. And so one day I was trying to get one of them back together, so it's so tight. And I've wrapped this knife that I just refinished. It's ceramic and anodizing and things on. And now I've wrapped it in a towel, and I've got everything lined up just the way it's supposed to be. And Elliot Williamson comes out of the shop, and I've got this big white rubber mallet, and I'm like, bang, bang. And he goes, "Are you using a hammer to put a knife together?" And I was like, "I don't want to hear a word out of you. I've seen some of this shit that goes on in this shop. If this is how I have to get this knife back together, that's how it goes." And he goes, "All right, that's a valid fucking point." And he walked away. And so 15 minutes later, I'm trying to get that knife back together, and the pivot and everything, it's a 2-sided pivot, and you've got to kind of work in concert. And they're so tight, and everything's so tight that I broke the screw off in the pivot. And I'm like, fuck. And you have to take the knife apart to get the pivot back out again. And I'm like, I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me with this. So I got to take the knife all the way back apart. I wound up having to refinish it, had to order a pivot. And then that's when I started, like, I just started getting a little, I got just one of the bits from the mill that was just like a cunt hair bigger than the pivot itself. Like what would a normal person use? Like not Brian, to instead of trying to friction fit or interference fit your pivot in. And I just opened that pivot up just so slightly. Not enough there was any play or anything. I was like, oh, there we go. That's so much easier. I was like, Brian, make it easier for people. Brian's ears are ringing as he speaks. I told him, and he goes, that's what you want to do. He's like, I do it that way. Brian's thing is he does it because he really doesn't want people taking his knives apart.
Sure. Yeah.
And so he's seen me do work on him, and he goes, hey, if you figured out how to get them apart and you can get them back together and the action's fine and all that, he goes, I have no problem. Like he's actually said that me doing refinishing work on one of his knives I'm like one of the only people that it would not void the warranty. Like if you send a knife back to him and he's like, as long as you're like, Mike Emler did this, he'd be like, yeah, I'm good with that. So, what was this? Greg asked this a little bit ago, and I forgot to put it up there. Is your steel American made, or do you
all of it?
All of it?
Yeah, I get it from New Jersey Steel Baron and Niagara in New York. Niagara Specialty Metals. Yeah, and all the CPM metal is made in the U.S.
Yeah, and Greg, I was going to tell you something. Like there's a lot of some of these steels that you see in knives. Most of those steels, regardless of what country it's made in, even if it's Fox knives or a Chinese made knife or something like that, most of those steels are being sent to China. They don't have CPM 20CV. They don't have 204P. They don't have M390. Those steels, like M390 is Böhler Udelholm. That's a European company anyway. But Elmax, is that Böhler? Is that Böhler Udelholm?
Sure. Yeah,
I know. N690 is a European stool out of Böhler Udelholm. But yeah, there's I mean, there's so many steels. Like there's steels that it doesn't matter where you get it from. It's going to be pretty much American made stuff. A lot of steels actually. I know that 9CR that's made so many different places because the chemistry's, pretty across that. 9CR. How do you feel about 9CR? I wanted to ask you 9CR 18 MOV. Everybody says it's a garbage steel, but I've actually had a lot of knives in it that were pretty all right.
I think I have a SOG that my mom got for me, in that, and it's a basic budget steel, but I have nothing against. I mean, there's very few steels that I don't like at all, which I can't really think of any. I don't think M390 should exist, in my opinion, but that's just one of my.
Why don't you like what's?
I think 20CV does it better, and 204P. I don't. In the ways that I've gotten in M390, I don't like it.
If the heat treat is done, well, I have a Reat Horizon D, and this knife, the M390 on this knife is incredible. The edge it takes, and this is the one where I was saying like the production heat treat that they did on this knife and the custom heat treat that I do on 20CV, the edge is so similar, and so is the edge retention. So I don't know what heat treat they used on this. So I mean, it goes from company to company because I've had M390 that was pretty horrible, and then I got this one, and this one is great, but it is kind of hit or miss. I think a lot of times it's just because it is a good steel. I just think it's sometimes the heat treat doesn't get done right. Jeremy Russell. I don't understand makers that don't want people to perform maintenance on their knives. If you want to pay $500 for a knife and then throw it away when the action stops because of dirt or lint. Yeah, Medford has a big time with it. Brian doesn't have as much of a problem with it as long as you're careful about how you do it. But the fact is, like I was saying, a lot of these bearing run knives, you can get away with blowing it out and rinsing it out and things like that, unless you've gotten it into something severe. Like say you dropped it into a bag of 80 grit garnet, and I'm not going to name any names here who might have actually done that more than once, because they were opening a bag of 80 grit garnet, and that is something you have to take that knife apart for. So I can kind of see both sides of it, because the fact is, depending on how the warranty is written, they can get themselves into having to do a lot. And then if you do something to your knife and then they don't honor the warranty, then they kind of look like a dick. You know what I mean? So I can kind of see why. Like that's why for a lot of years, and I think they stopped doing it as much, but Microtech, that's all proprietary hardware. Now I've taken this apart, and obviously I've done ceramic finish on this and things like that. You can get the tools for it, but the fact is, like, if you do it and then you send it back and they tell you no, they look like a dick, but you violated the warranty anyway. I mean, I can get it. It's kind of a catch-22. I personally like knives that you can take apart in maintenance.
Yep, same. Yeah, I don't like knives that they don't want you to mess with. Rotax, Medfords, like you mentioned.
Where does Niagara get their steel from? So Niagara usually gets a lot of the CPM stuff. Are they the exclusive dealer for 20CV right now?
I think all CPM steels in the US. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. And they make it there.
Yeah.
They have, hot mill or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
They do that.
That's what I thought. I was going to say. So yeah, Casper, Niagara makes most of the steel that you're getting from Niagara. They're making on site. There are some things that they sell that I think they get it in a raw form and then roll it.
Yep.
But I think 20 CV they make, like all the CPM stuff, I think they make on site.
Yep.
What is this? Oh, here we go. Mike, it's all right to be depressed and play with knives. It's all right to play with knives because we're depressed. It's a true statement. Just another reason Medford knives suck. Now, I'm not going to say Medford knives suck. They are really good knives. I do have a tendency that I feel that Greg, as much as I can be, like I said earlier, a moody bitch, Greg is fucking bipolar. Have you gotten to go to a knife? Have you gotten to go to a knife show yet, John, and seen some of the antics?
Not. I think I've seen him once, maybe in person. I've gone to Blade Show twice, and some little small knife shows, but Blade Show was twice, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he has a tendency. So John, Greg is one of those dudes. Like I like Greg, but I get really upset with him. I get upset with his racist rants and things like that. That's not what we want to bring to the table in the knife community. It doesn't need to be there. It's toxic. But I do like Greg, and I like the fact like he's a jarhead, and I love jarheads. I'm a Navy guy. I love the jarheads because they're so much fun, because they just get wound up, they get stupid and do stuff, and they're a lot of fun to just spin them up and watch them. But Greg Greg can go sideways in a heartbeat. And so if you're like, this year I'm going as an employee of Artisan. I'm actually working the table at the booth this year at Blade Show West. But the last time I went to Blade Show, or the time before, I can't remember, it was 2018 or 2019. We get there and I'm like, oh, finally Greg's here. Like every time I go to the Medford table, Jeff, the big tall guy, Jeff is there. And so I'm like, oh, Greg's actually there. And we start walking up, and Greg has got a whole bunch of guys that are very obviously Marines at his table. And I'm like, oh, cool. But you don't want to just walk up to Greg's table. You want to be like two people back so you can see how he's interacting with people, because like that way you get a feel for it. And like, as we're getting ready to walk up, there's like these four guys that are right in front of us, and we got the camera and everything on the gimbal, the phone on the gimbal, using it as a camera. And these guys are like, they get up to the table, and you can see, like, I see it on his face. I was like, today's not the day. Today's not the day we're filming. And I was getting ready to walk. I was like, oh, let's see what happens. And I see the look on Greg's face, and these guys go, hey, we're just curious about your knives. And little short, bald-headed Greg looks at these four Marines and goes, I'm not here to answer your fucking questions. Either buy a goddamn knife or get the fuck out of here. And I was like, yeah, we ain't filming today. But it's just so funny, like, to see him get so wound up, especially like on his YouTube, like when people, take his knives apart and send them in. And I'm like, I've had his knives apart. They're not that complicated. And he's like, are these proprietary pivots? Because that's not a proprietary pivot. I got a tool for that. It's a titanium pocket clip that I ground the middle out of and made into like a split fork thing. And that's all it is. And I'm like, it's like a split screwdriver. So Patina Turner asked, any interest in Vanax?
No. I'm trying to get Magna Cut. That's the new steel.
Yeah,
that I'm trying to get. Not Vanax.
I've had some stuff in Vanax. Hey, buddy.
Yeah. How is it? I don't think I've ever handled a knife in Vanax.
I like Vanax. I would much rather have Nitro V than Vanax, though. To tell you the truth, like Vanax it's good, and it's got a really clean grain structure, and it does take a nice edge. But like, I think for what you get, it's a little overpriced for what you're getting, which really isn't that much different than a lot of the other super clean steels. You know what I mean? Sure. So yeah. Greg Gutfield does Greg get upset with Artisan? Yes, Greg absolutely gets upset with Artisan. And that's why I'm kind of frustrated, because we're going to be right next to him, and I can see how that's going to be. So nice shop, Cat. So, here we go. You're sitting on the mouse, Cat. OS 10. I haven't done it. I haven't gotten anything in OS 10 yet. Have you done anything in OS 10 or ground anything in OS 10?
I don't think I've ground anything. I have a cold steel Spada, largest Spada in AOS 10. And in
OS 10.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know I think it is A, because cold steel uses OS 10A. I don't know what the difference is either. But yeah, it seems like a decent steel. It reminds me of VG10, I think.
Yeah, I could see that. I haven't ever got to sharpen or do anything in any of those, but I like I always like Cold Steel was one of those companies that could get like a budget steel and then get the heat treat on it like dialed in to where you're like, wow, that's pretty good. Like OS 8. I have some Cold Steel OS 8 knives that I'm like, I'd put that up against some way higher end steels. Like that steel's hitting out of its weight class right there. Yeah, like the first time you're using it, you're like, did they mislabel this? That can't be OS 8. Um, Sinister asks the 20.5, not yet.
I've done a bunch of those, and I got one right here that I just finished up. It still needs an edge.
Are those in OS 10?
Yeah, they are. And I've done 3 of them. So yes, I have ground OS 10.
I didn't know they were in OS 10. I thought they were in. I just assumed they were. I haven't seen one yet. I just assumed they were in 20 CV because that's what the.
It's basically like a miniature version of this. The normal.
Yeah, I hadn't. Like I said, I hadn't seen one of the 20.5s yet, and I just kind of assumed because the 8020s were in 20 CV. I kind of just assumed that they were in the same steel.
Hey, yeah, no, they're OS 10A. So I have reground it.
Hey, your claws are really sharp, and you're awful close to my manly bits there.
This is a nice size too. Like the Demco one is really big.
Yeah,
this is a nice, mid-range or borderline.
Like, see, I might not like I loved the 8020, and guys that know me can tell you, like, I wear XXX. Like, we're on the job site, I have like XXL gloves, and so that 8020 just was good for me. Like, I mean, that's my Norseman, which is it's a really big knife. So for me, that the 8020 was just a perfect size, and everybody's like, "Oh, I'll get the 20.5. It's smaller," and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to like it, but I have one coming because. My buddy is like me. He's the only person I know that if there's a lemon knife to get, he's going to get it. And so he got his 8020.5, and Jared says he's got one. I've got one coming for sharpening, but he must have gotten the only one that got a garbage edge. And he sent me a video. He's like, he's like, compared to, I was like, look, it happens. Like it happens on so many knives. And I get jaded, and I'm like, wow, every one of these must be screwed up, but I forget that I run a sharpening service. So I'm going to be the guy that sees everyone that has a bad edge. Sure. And so I kind of think that I should give Benchmade a little less hard of a time, but there's so many other quality control issues with those knives.
Do you know who makes these ones?
I do not.
It's not cold steel, although it's very like cold steel-ish, like in the look and the way it's made.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. Taiwan.
Taiwan. It's probably it's probably the same company that was doing the cold steel knives, because I mean, it's like there's so many companies out there that do OEM, and they'll do stuff for specific companies and it'll be labeled, but then they do stuff for other companies. Like case in point, I'm working with Artisan to get an OEM knife done, and I don't have the money to do the run right now, but I do have an investor that wants to do it. It's Jeff from ReadyMan, and we're probably going to release a small little survival type hiking knife through his company. And it's just going to be my design. So I really don't know. I mean, it could be the company that does some of Spyderco's Taiwan stuff. Who knows? Those companies work. Like I've heard from knife makers and people that own knife companies. They're like, yeah, you'll go and you'll see, like, you'll take a tour of the factory and you'll see like 3 different knives being made from 3 different companies in the same factory. And I'm like, huh, you would kind of think that it would be like, you see these companies competing against each other. What you don't realize is that they're basically the same knife, Yeah. So, what do you say? I think, look, Kat, you're really starting to get in the way here. Jeremy says, I think they use the same factory that Cold Steel does. And Jared said the same thing.
Yeah, that would make sense because the surface finish looks like a Cold Steel. Like
I was going to, you know what? Have you noticed that, like, there's some companies, like, you can pick their surface finish out after doing so many knives and having so many knives. You're like, oh, that looks like this company's work, or that looks like this company's work, or that looks like the stone wash that you would get coming out of Wee Knife Company versus like Riat. And you're like, oh, there's a and the feel of the action and things like that.
Yes. Yeah.
So Crasper asks, RMJ Tactical, good USA company? I don't know really what RMJ Tactical is.
They make a bunch of tomahawks and some fixed blades, I think. I went to their booth at Blade Show. And they're cool dudes. I don't know. I've never owned one of their products though. Their tomahawks look cool.
I
didn't like their steel collection, but
I did see. We were talking about this in a feed here one night. We had cats in my lap. The people were talking about Cold Steel, and has let Lynn Thompson have part of the family of stuff that was on Cold Steel, and everybody's like, oh, so that means these would be there. And I was like, basically, it's like they took the Cold. You remember the old Cold Steel Lynn Thompson special projects catalog? And the first half of it was like Cold Steel knives, and then the second half of it was the part you really didn't look at because it was like blowguns and tomahawks and halberds and spears and shit. I was like, it's like they tore the catalog in half. Here, you take this. Go ahead, do whatever you want with those designs. And that's basically what it is. It's like that part of the Lynn Thompson special products catalog that no one ever really looked at. That you did. Oh, there's all the knives. Oh, what's this? Pepper spray and a blowgun and and darts and all that shit. So. Well, we have reached the 2-hour mark. If you need to go, you are more than welcome. If everybody wants to stick around for a little bit, we can. I'm willing to take some questions, but I know it's probably late there. What is it, like 11:30?
12.
Wow. So yeah, if you've got stuff you need to do.
No, well, just sleep. But it's Saturday tomorrow. I'll sleep in. So
cool.
So.
Yeah, we can stick around for a little bit. So if anybody's got any more questions, we'll run that for a little bit. And guys, I know I said last week there was a hard fast. I don't know why I thought this. There was like a hard fast limit for Twitch, because we do still have some couple people watching on Twitch. The fact is, like, that is it, because what I was trying to do was I was trying to upload the recorded version of the podcast to Twitch. And so to do that, to stream a pre-recorded one, you can only do 2 hours. So last week I ended the Twitch stream and I didn't need to. So I apologize. So there's still 29 people here. What do you guys got? Anybody got any questions? I got a Ferrum Forge story for you. We were at Elliot's shop one night, and we're all hanging out, and I'm in the back and I'm grinding and I'm working on knives and stuff. And I come out and I realize that now a party has started in the shop. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And I come out, I'm cursing, swearing. I got a piece of metal that I completely screwed up. And I was like, I got so mad that I walked out, and I was literally like seconds from just heaving it through the shop. And I walk out and there's like 10 people in the shop. And I was like, hey, what's going on, guys? That would happen at the old Ferrum Forge shop real regular on like a Friday night. You just walk out, and the next thing you know, there's like 12 people in just like the workshop area, just randomly show up, because we used to do happy hour at the shop, and Elliot called it Ferrum Fridays. So come about, I don't know, about 4 o'clock, we'd head right across the parking lot was a brewery called Helms Brewing. And we would just walk right across the parking lot and go in there, and like we'd walk in, and I swear to God, I think I bought 3 beers there, because like we'd walk in and those guys, we'd bring so many people with us that did buy beer, that like me and Elliot and Chris and a couple of us that were always there on Friday night, we'd bring like a big group of people with us. And they're like, look, you bring so much business. I think I bought 3 beers there. Like I would walk out of that place and be so drunk that I would have to sleep in my car for like 2 hours before I could even drive. I'm like, I'm shit faced. I got to lay down for a little bit. I can't drive like this. Jeremy says, what's the best way to contact John about regrinds, email or Instagram?
I'll respond the fastest on Instagram, but emails work too.
Yeah, so you're the opposite. Yeah. You're the opposite of me. I very rarely check my Instagram DMs. Like, guys, if you're trying to contact me, it's best just to use the email that's in the description of the videos. I very rarely check all of my DMs, because I get so much weirdness in the DMs. Like if it's like Chris and Alex, I have a group chat with Alex Steingraber, Chris from Cerberus Knives, and Jacob Creates, and our friend Trevor. And so I'm in there and I check it, but that's always the very top, because we're real active in that group, because there's 4 of us. But like everything else, like it always winds up down to the bottom. And then somebody's like, I sent you a DM like a week ago. And I'm like, that's the worst possible way to contact me. The second worst is by the phone, because if I don't recognize the phone number, I don't answer it. And you guys know what that goes back to. That goes back to the whole stalker incident and the do not contact order and shit. So let's see here. Question, Mike, off the topic. How is orange peel process done on titanium? Actually, it's really easy the way I do it. is I have a 1-inch wide Scotch-Brite belt, and I just turn it on, and then I'll get the surface finish, like usually around, I might take it to like 220 grit, or I'll just blast it and then tumble it. And then you just basically just take it and just lightly touch the surface to the wheel and keep constant motion going back and forth. Like you want to keep it like linear. You don't want to like try to get certain areas where you'll get your ridges going different directions. But basically what it is, you're just kind of just skimming that Scotch-Brite wheel over the surface. And what it does is it picks up it moves the titanium and the vanadium in that compound around, and it brings that vanadium to the surface in little ripples. And that's why it looks like orange peel. And so that's why orange peel doesn't scratch as bad. I've mentioned that before. So what you've brought is basically you've brought more of the vanadium to the surface. You can still anodize it because the vanadium is in an alloy with the titanium, sort of. So you don't lose too much color. It kind of is a little bit darker, but you can then anodize that surface, and your anodizing will actually last longer because you have little low spots and stuff like that. And it saves your anodize. Like I said that about this. Like the bronze ano on this has lasted so much longer because I did do an orange peel on it. Not a real heavy one, but I don't know how clear that's going to come through, but it definitely has been orange peel. It's not coming through very well at all. Yeah, there you can see it.
Yeah, the corners.
Yeah, and I orange peeled the backspacer, and I did that well over a year ago. And so case in point, I did this just a few months ago. This was well over a year ago. It's still, and this is just pretty much worn out because it's not orange peeled. No, Twitch died. That's what I was afraid of. I didn't do anything. I thought that they wouldn't let me keep going more than 2 hours. Let's see here. Mike, do you still have my number in your phone, or did you take me out because you kept confusing me with the other Jeremy? I would imagine I still have you in my phone, Jeremy. I don't know. That might have been when I was drinking a lot. I don't drink near as much anymore. No, there you go. Can this texture be done over top of another texture? No. You're going to lose it because the Scotch-Brite's just going to, like if you were trying to do it over like a stone wash or a blast. I don't know if you've ever done an orange peel on titanium, but it definitely, it doesn't, it's going to obscure anything that you're doing, especially on like a medium or a fine Scotch-Brite like I use. Guys, I haven't had to ring the bell at all. One time. I figured that John would generate some more ringing the bell. What is this? Can I DM you after this for a dashi? Just email me. I would prefer you emailed me. There's a good chance that I won't get to because if you send me a DM, Murky Ocean, I'm going to tell you to email me because I don't want it to get lost in that mess of what is the DMs. So there's a chance that I may be getting in touch with you to do a Benchmade 940 regrind because I have a spare blade for that. I'm just curious. I want to see the difference. Like, I know you said it's not that pronounced, but since I have a spare blade for it, I don't see that it would be much of a loss.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the third. Murky Ocean, where can I find your email? It is in the description of every one of my videos. It is like where I talk about what's going on in the video, like Jared sent me a knife, and then we talk about the channel that usually runs the background on the video, and then the first line that says for sharpening service, email, and there it is. What was Casper saying? I don't know. Casper was saying something, and I don't know what it is. Nah, I don't see it. I think he was talking about the finish on that, the orange peel on that. Murky Ocean, I never look at the descriptions. You should look at the descriptions because that's where all my affiliate links are. And that's where I've started doing this thing. If you had a YouTube channel, you'd definitely be in my. I've started doing this thing where when I do a video, Spitfire. So, Spitfire, where's I was complaining about not ringing a bell, and now I got to ring the bell. Or the thermos, as it would be, because I'm in my this is the jankiest podcast on the planet. You guys are sitting on 3 empty milk crates that has a piece of plywood on it that's holding up my laptop in my garage on a love seat with a cat in my lap. There you go. Rehandling an axe, currently trying to decide between tongue oil or raw boiled linseed. Tongue oil always looks better. tongue oil is going to give you a nice surface finish that comes out great. I love tongue oil. What do you think, John? What do you think?
I don't use either of those things. I usually use some kind of like wax lubricant or frog lube to like artificially dye the things darker. But I don't use. What is he saying?
Who? No,
What material was he using on?
It's probably wood.
I rarely use wood.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's doing an axe handle.
Yeah.
I like tongue oil because it gets you more of that. It gets you more of a gloss. Tongue oil would bring up a polish even without like it being sticky or waxy or slippery. Tongue oil's like that's if I was going to refinish up buttstock on a shotgun, it definitely would be done in tongue oil. I want to mention this before we talk about the Magna Cut thing. So Spitfire here is a young Marine that helped me move into this house and now is writing. Who are you doing articles for review articles on knives for? Just out of curiosity. That was directed at you, Spitfire. You can throw that in. And yet it is so awesome, Mike. Yeah, it's awesome. This has been fun. I do enjoy this, whether I make money on it or not. It's still just fun. So he's doing hickory. So yeah, I would use tongue oil. That's going to give you it's going to give you that dark finish kind of, and it's going to come up and it's going to be glossy without being greasy and sticky, especially if you rub it real well with some, like in between, you're using some double-aught steel wool. It's gonna come up nice and just keep coating it until it just stops taking it in and then just wipe it off real good. Craig Gutfield asked, John, are your rope handles pretty strong?
They're very rigid. Yeah. I have it over here, like water thin super glue. This stuff. Starbond.
Mm-hmm.
And it hardens up really fast, and it's very hard.
So you just use super glue in your rope handles.
Yep. Yeah. It's like a special super glue that is very watery, so it goes down.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. I also have you ever done any of the ones where you like so that it's like a continuous piece if somebody wanted to peel that off to use it? Have you ever done handles like that?
I have. Yes. Yeah, I cannot harden it. Not harden it if you don't want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Task and purpose. That's who he's doing it for. So Spitfire is actually writing articles for task and purpose. So I got something I want to text you about that though. You got to be careful because we have heard in the past of knife publications, especially online publications, that an editor reached out to someone and had them do some work and then they never got paid for it. Make sure you're getting paid. Make sure you're making the money. Any designs you want to try in the future, John?
Yes, I want to develop something like a survival type knife, something larger knife. Because the biggest design I have right now is probably the kitchen knife, and then the biggest like non-kitchen knife design is the Lanza one that I added, and that's like a little over 8 inches, I think. So I want to have something a little bit bigger that you can order for like survival stuff or something like that.
Yeah. Sinister Knife Clips was talking about the tongue oil. Got to rub it good and then wipe it off. Yeah, you got to rub it in really good. Get that. It's almost like a friction polish when you use the tongue oil and you do it, it like it polishes it up, but it doesn't like get sticky. And if you rub it really good, that friction will kind of polish it. And then when it stops taking in, but in between, you use a little bit of double-aught steel wool, and you get a really good finish with tongue oil on hickory. Greg Gutfield, do your handles have thumb and finger grooves?
Thumb and finger grooves on some models.
I think he's talking like because more like this, like the one that I designed, where it has the like that one has multiple.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, most of them have just the single for the pointy finger, and then we'll have like the rest. Where's the Lanza? Where you got a little more defined on this one, and then a reverse grip where you put your thumb.
I like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. And this one, which is most of them, like I said, yeah, just have the one. I don't. It's very hard to make a lot of grooves ergonomic for a ton of hand sizes. So I try
Yeah.
to keep it more simple. Which
I found so a lot of people have said, because I have really big hands, and by the time I make a knife that fits my hand, and I would think this wouldn't work, but a lot of people, and I've noticed the same thing from Jason Guthrie, who is the South African maker, and that dude is a monster, and Elliot Williamson. All of us are big guys, huge big guys with big hands, and usually a guy that is that big that makes a knife that fits his hand, a lot of times it fits pretty much everyone's hand almost as comfortably. I've had people say that, like, oh, that's really comfortable, you would think. And I'm like, wow, I would think that since I made it for me, that it would be less comfortable somebody with smaller hands, but it doesn't seem to work out that way.
Bigger is definitely better for the grooves. Yeah. I have Casper, like large hands with skinny fingers.
Yeah, I don't. I have large hands with big sausage fingers. I sent a video to somebody earlier. It was actually Alex and those guys, and we were talking about pew-pews and firearms, and I had my 1911 out, and we were talking about like round in the chamber versus on, and we were talking about other stuff, and I had it in my hand. I took a picture, and then I remembered something I had done. I can cover a 1911 with my hand. Like if I put my hand on top of it, like it almost is completely covered. And I was like, yeah, I did this for a guy one time. He was like, how big are your hands actual? And I put my hand over it. I was like, that's a full size 1911. You tell me. And the guy was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You actually want to cut stuff with it, Casper? He's talking about grinding it. Can you grind a Medford?
I have, but I don't have the thing to take off the pivot. So if you send me the blade on some of them, yeah,
but they're not hard. You can make one out of it, out of a piece of steel.
Huh? It's a spanner bit, I think.
Yeah, like it's a spanner. I hang on a second. I can show you what I use. Stay here, Kat. You got to get out of my lap for a second. I'll show you what I used, and it's simple. It's just a.
I've done only 2 Medford knives. Regrinds on them, and for both of them, I don't think I had to take the mat scales. I could leave it in, which was nice.
Oh, I muted myself. What I was saying is I just took a pocket clip that didn't have the holes in it. This is just an unbent titanium pocket clip like Elliot uses, and I don't know what I think we were using this to. Oh, I remember what this was for. I put a hole in it because I was shortening a screw. And I wanted to be able to hold on to it and shorten that screw on the grinder. And so I just marked it, but I drilled a hole in it so that I could put the screw through it. But all I did was I took one of these that did not have the holes in it yet, and I just ground out on the grinder, just up against the belt, an area that it would just gap. It would just span that. And I just used one of these to like just a regular pocket clip blank, and just use that to do it. It's really not that they're not that big a deal. But I just don't understand why he knows people are going to take his stuff apart. He just gets so wound up about it.
Yeah.
But well, guys, I don't want to let this go too long. If you guys want to, we can do a little after. Just let me know if you guys want to do a little after show, and I'll just BS with you guys. I have 2 more beers, but I definitely want to end this so that I can get it starts to get complicated and difficult. Would you stop? It gets complicated and difficult to get this uploaded to Apple Podcasts when it starts getting more than like 2.5 hours. So I want to go ahead and cut it. If you guys want to meet up and we'll do an after show, John, if you want to stick around, it's fine. If you want to go to bed and get some sleep, I don't sleep. So it's all up to you. But yeah, we'll do a quick after show and just kind of hang out for a little bit if you guys want to. But I am going to end the podcast now, and we'll just go live with another one if you guys want to. Murky Ocean says after show. All right. Looks like some people are down for an after show. So we did it with Jared. So, all right, guys, we're going to go ahead and go, and I will see if John wants to stick around for a little bit for it, or if he wants to go to bed, then we can just do an after show. So I will see you guys in about maybe 5 minutes. It's about how long it takes me to get it all set up. So see you guys later. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, the entire video version of this will be available. There'll be a link in the description of the podcast so that you can just go ahead and go to the video, because there's going to be a lot of it that doesn't translate. John showed some of his designs. We talked about some stuff that you're just not going to be able to hear. But I do appreciate if you are listening this on the Apple Podcasts, that even people listen to it. So You guys take it easy. I'll see you next time.